Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to our special half-year in review episode. My name's Sean Wasserkrug. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. We're officially 6 months into the year. We're at the halfway point, and now it's time for us to give you guys our top 5 most surprising, disappointing, and our top 10 worst and best movies of the year. The half years, we do this for a reason. There's a reason why we do the half year one. One, because it's halfway through the year. But two is because by the time we get to the end of the year, there's been so many movies at that point that some films, especially in this first half, we want to acknowledge. We want them to basically get their time in the spotlight, whether it's good or bad.
Or bad.
That by the end of the year, they might not still be on those lists. So we want to talk about them at the halfway point so that at least they get acknowledged. I know, especially for our most surprisings, because we only do 5 or 6 if you count honorable mention, most of those very rarely will still be in that top 5 by year's end. Top 10 worst, there's a good chance that the top 10 worst are probably going to stay in the top 10 worst. But best, I think you said it was how many, like prediction wise, in your top 10, how many of your actual top 10 do you honestly think are still going to remain in your top 10 by year's end?
I think 4 are almost definite. Beyond that, it's iffy.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I would say 4, maybe 5 might still be in my best, unless the rest of the year just is disappointing as shit. Because if you guys looked at our most anticipated of 2022, there's still a good chunk of our movies that either A, haven't come out yet, or they got pushed back to next year.
A lot less this time, though.
Yes, not nearly as bad. But we also were prepared for that when we did the anticipated video.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of movement, because that's always kind of the funny thing too. That's why I also really like doing half years, because like our top 10, we're like, is this really our top 10 list for the year so far? Whereas at the end of the year, you add your prestigious films or these films that are like, well, they're supposed to be great. Whereas like with this one, we're getting some dark horses pulling up here. It's like, well, it's not going to be here at year's end.
For that matter.
Exactly, not going to be here at year's end, but let's give them a tip of the hat while we're at it. But before we do the tip of the hat of, hey, you're doing really, really good, we're going to talk about our most disappointments. Now, normally, especially at the end of the year, because there's so much and it's our final list of the year, we usually separate our disappointing and worst in one separate video and our surprising and best in a separate video. But because it's a half year, we're just going to kind of do it all in one. Now, we're going to do it a little differently this time. So that way, because we know we have a lot of overlapping with our disappointing and worst and surprising and best. So how we're going to basically do it is if, let's say Brian, for example, if 3 of his most disappointing are in his worst list, then we're going to hold off and talk about those or mention them once we get to the worst list. So we're not going to go through his 1 through 5 if 3 of them are already on his worst list, because we're going to talk about them later in greater detail, because we just don't want to talk about the same movies twice, unless it's on our list in different ways. But that's how we're going to do it. So if you guys are wondering, like, well, hey, Brian went from his 5 or his honorable mention to his 2. It's like, well, because it's going to be talked about later. But we're going to start with disappointed first. Now, for me, all my disappointed, except for 1, and even that 1 is the honorable mention for worst, are not in my worst list. Or how is that for you? How's your disappointed to your worst?
Only 2 movies on my disappointment list are also in my bottom 10.
Okay, so we'll get. For us, it's mostly our surprising list. Our surprising list is very much in our best. So there's a lot of bad this year, and our good stuff is kind of all lumped into one spot. So we're going to go ahead and start with disappointing. I'm going to go with my honorable mention. And like I said, disappointing. I say this every year. I say this every time we do this. Disappointing doesn't mean bad at all. We could still relatively like those movies, but it didn't hit our expectations, our excitement levels based off of who was in the film. We just expected more out of the film than what we got. So disappointing does not equal bad unless it just really, really sucked. So when we're saying these, don't go, oh my God, did that was worst movie of the year? Well, no, because they're probably not in our worst list. So that's what we mean by disappointing. Now, for me, I'll go ahead and go with my honorable mention. This was a film that, honestly, like most Netflix films, you didn't know it existed until like 2 weeks before it came out. But once I heard it was coming out, I saw the trailer for it. The cast for it, relatively small cast, but the cast for it had me going, ooh, this could be really, 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 really good. And it necessarily really, it was boring and wasn't. And I'm talking about Windfall. Windfall, Jason Segel. We both love Jason Segel. Jesse Plemons. We both love Jesse Plemons. And oh my God, there's only 3 casts in the movie, and I'm blanking on the girl's name.
I have not seen the movie, so I can't help you here.
Yeah, it's but I mean, we saw I saw the trailer for this movie, and Lily Collins is what I was thinking about. And it's basically it's kind of like a play, and I mean it's not, but it's kind of set up like a play. It's all pretty much at one location. You've got this rich couple coming to their like summer home or whatever for like a weekend, and Jason Segel plays this burglar who's in the house as they come in, and it's basically this kind of movie where they're all stuck there because Jason Segel's not going to let them leave, and it's kind of a cat and mouse, mind, kind of like intellectually trying to get in each other's heads kind of movie. And when you have Jason Segel and you have Jesse Plemons and even Lily Collins is great. And it felt like this movie was going to be like really great. And I always say this movie, I throw this movie out a lot, and Brian's heard me say this movie quite a few times. I was hoping it was going to be like one of my favorite films where pretty much everything's in one setting, where it's just 2 actors just trying to overdo one another. And that's the movie Sleuth. With Michael Caine and I can't ever say his name without doing like the accent thing, the Michael Caine kind of thing.
Oh.
And Jude Law. I love that film so much, and it's basically just watching these 2 fantastic actors just cat and mousing each other the whole way through, and that's what I was kind of hoping Windfall was going to be, and it is to a point, but it's just dreadfully boring and dull, and when they do try to throw excitement in there, it feels like they threw it in because they realized that the story wasn't as exciting as they thought it was going to be. And even the ending, it was just kind of like, okay. It just didn't work for me overall. And it was one of those that's like, I just went in with going, I could not wait to watch this. Like, it was one of those like 2 a.m. hit. I'm like, I am watching Windfall. And afterwards, I was like, I kind of want my like hour and a half, hour 40 minutes back, because
I could have gone to bed earlier. Man.
Exactly. I could have gone to bed earlier. I think there was another thing that came out that day too. So I had to watch that and then the next thing. I can't remember what it was though. But it was just boring. And I expected more from that cast. Now, granted, like I said, it's 3 people, but that cast with that setting, I just expected more overall. And you said you hadn't seen it.
I have not seen it. I was on the edge, and I heard from you and a couple other people that it wasn't great. So I was like, not going to bother.
Yeah, so Brian has no retort about that film. What about you? Your honorable mention, is it in your worst or
no, not at all? And people will either be surprised that it's not or think that assume I would be. My disappointment, my honorable mention is The Batman.
Honestly, I'm surprised it wasn't number 1. So
well, no, here's the thing: is The Batman is not in my bottom 10 by any means. It's not even in my bottom
expected you to
15
you've
or
been hating on that movie.
No, but here's the thing: is The Batman. I didn't hate the movie. It's just I didn't love it either. And the reason it's only is an honorable mention on my disappointments is because I honestly had not set my expectations high. I mean, if you told me when they said, "Hey, we're going to make a Batman film," a new Batman film, and with the Matt Reeves, yes, my expectations at that point would have been high. But once you saw trailers for it and kind of saw the tone of it, and had Paul Dano, and especially saw what he was doing with Riddler and all those kind of things, I was like, this is not going to be the Batman for me, and I was right. So I mean, while I was disappointed, I had already lowered my expectations before I saw the movie. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I remember during our most anticipated, this was like one of the most shocked things I thought. Like we got to like the final 2, and I was like, okay, well, Batman's on mine, and I was like, I'm expecting.
I hadn't said it at all.
You didn't even say it. I was like, what? And you're like, no, I don't care about this movie.
That's not my most anticipated at all.
Yeah, and then it came out, and you're still just like indifferent to like it. I don't like it kind of thing. And I was like, all right. I was like, so I had a feeling. I was like, this is gonna be on his worst. This is gonna be on his disappointed.
It is not on my worst list, and it is not even my most disappointed. It's just because I understood it was just not. It's the Batman movie some people love. It's just not one for me. So I was disappointed I didn't get a Batman film, but I was not disappointed by this film based on my expectations for it.
and I'm going to be talking about the Batman later on a different list. So I'm not going to retort any of this right now. My number 5 is another movie I know you have not seen because you mentioned it before we started. I like the movie. I just expected more, and a lot of people really enjoyed this one compared to its predecessor. I think it was actually a downgrade, and that's Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I really enjoyed the first Sonic film. I thought Ben Schwartz did great as Sonic. James Marsden was good in the film. Jim Carrey, to me, I think was back to being the Jim Carrey that everyone loves. He looked like he was having fun playing the kind of wacky Dr. Robotnik again. So when I saw that everyone was coming back, and then you added Tails and Idris Elba as Knuckles, I was like, all right, this is going to be great. This is going to be awesome. It's like I said, it's not a bad film. It's just first off, there's a fucking 5-minute dance number in the middle of the movie that is unnecessary and needed. And I know it's for the kids, but when you completely just stop the film to throw this dance number in there that was not needed, which, hey, you did that in the first film where they went to a shady bar and basically Sonic did the Quicksilver scene where he's running through and he's messing with everybody, which was great. And instead in this movie, you did let's do a Uptown Funk dance sequence number, and if they lose the dance contest, they get thrown into a fucking fire. It's like, no, that's just fucking dumb. And then the main reason why I did not enjoy this film over the previous film, and I know a lot of people love this actress, but I think, and even Honest Trailers, they even attacked this part of the film too, is that once again, you stop the film to do this subplot that no one gives a shit about with the sister of James Marsden's wife. Oh God, here his wife's name. I'm blanking on his wife. Oh yeah, Tika Sumpter. She plays Maddie. Her sister Rachel, played by Natasha Rothwell, who, in my opinion, was the worst part of the first film. She was god awful. She was basically like this character that hated on Marsden for no reason and constantly just digged at him. And every time she did, it felt flat as hell in the first film. They decided, we're going to do a Hawaiian wedding with her in the second movie, and that's how you get Marsden and Maddie out of the picture so Sonic and Knuckles and all this stuff can do stuff, which that's fine. But you put her with, I'm sorry, not to go full on but a gorgeous man in Shamar Moore. Dude's gorgeous. I'm sorry. Rachel, character, no. She's unlikable as hell. I can't buy that, which you find out later in the movie, spoilers, that he's like an operative who's there to try to grab Sonic, and then he falls in love with her at the end. But you stop the film for a 10-minute scene of this where they do the wedding, and then Sonic shows up, and then all the agents come out and trap Sonic, and then you have her and Maddie do this James Bond-esque rescue where she's being an epic badass and taking out all the agents and shit. And you basically, like I said, this is a kid's film, which is why I excuse the dance scene. This is a kid's movie, and you stop the film flat to do this 10 minutes of this character that I could not stand and just derailed the whole movie, that by the time it finally stopped, you're like, cool, is this still a Sonic film? Are we going to get back to Sonic at some point? And then we never got the third act, which was, I think, really well done. But those two things alone, maybe just downright go, this movie's not that good compared to the first film, whereas the first film was had a focus, it had a mindset of Sonic and Marsden, kind of, alien buddy film. And this one, it's like, we're going to stop the film in two separate points and just derail the plot and derail all the momentum you had with these characters. And yeah, it's one of those, I'll go back and rewatch Sonic. I almost have no desire to ever go back and rewatch Sonic 2 because of those two scenes. So that's why it's my number 5. Like I said, I still gave it a decent review, but those 2 points maybe are probably two of the worst parts of the film, or two worst things I saw this year in the movies. Which, like I said, you haven't seen it, so we're gonna jump right ahead. Your number 5, is it in your worst, or is it something we're gonna talk about?
Nope. My number 5 actually sits just outside my top 10. Honestly, it's
best or worst?
Oh no, I'm my best.
Okay.
It's like my number 13 of the year so far. It won't be anywhere near there by year's end. But that is Scream 2022. Scream is a movie that I really wanted to love and had high expectations for, because okay, Scream 1 obviously is still the best one. Scream 2 I think is really good as well. Scream 3 mediocre but passable. And 4 was kind of got a little better. But this one, not only did it have they had a new way to take on. They were doing the whole requel thing. Kind of, it had a good point in time coming out where it had something new to add to the story, something new to kind of mock in movies, with the whole requel idea. You had a lot of the original cast returning, but you had a lot of great new cast. You had like Jack Quaid, you had Melissa Barrera. You know, you have all these people coming in. And so I'm like, this has a lot of potential. And then you add in that this time, because obviously Wes Craven has passed, the directors of Ready or Not, which is a great horror comedy movie that came out a few years ago. I'm like, these guys seem like they really know how to kind of find that tone. And while I did enjoy the movie for the most part, it wasn't everything I hoped it would be. I mean, the plot got really convoluted. The characters, they made some really weird decisions with. The kills honestly weren't all that exciting. But more than anything else, Sean and I had like even better ideas than they did as to where the movie should have gone.
We got way fucking better.
We had all the ideas of where we thought it was going to go while we were watching it, and then where it should have gone when it did. But where they went with it was kind of one of those things where it feels like they just had a bag of all the characters' names. So the killer is this person and this person. Okay, cool. Let's come up with a random reason for them to have done it. And so while I enjoyed the movie quite a bit, it did disappoint me from what I expected.
I'm going to go ahead and talk about this because this is on my list as well. It's not on my worst. It's not on my worst. But this is actually my number 2 most disappointing film of the year. So instead of us talking about it in 5 minutes again, I'm going to go ahead and get mine out of the way. Your ranking of the Screams, right there with you. Love the first. I actually really love the second one. Third one is crap, but that's because Parker Posey more than anything else. And I thought 4 was actually quite good because I actually went back to rewatch. Yeah, I actually rewatched 4 before this one came out, and I was like, this is actually really good. I don't think anyone just really gave it a chance. And with this one, like I said, you and I were so excited for Scream. We were talking about this movie, like we were going to do a spoiler review. And I remember for the longest time after this movie came out, you were like, Sean, it's not bad. And I was like, no, it's not good. This is not a good movie. And then didn't you go back and rewatch it? And you're like, yeah, I'm kind of starting to see your points.
Well, no, I still think it's not bad. I think when I first saw it, I was a little bit more forgiving to some of the bad parts of it because there was enough things I liked in it. But as I rewatched it a second time and then like just thought about it more, I kind of backed off a little bit and goes, it was good, but there's a lot of things that disappointed me. But I still think it's not bad.
Yeah, my problem with Scream, and I'm not going to go into a whole full diatribe, or at least I'm not going to try to anyway. What I love about Scream, what you and I both love about Scream, is we love how clever it is. And we love that it keeps us on our toes and stuff like that. And this movie did not do that. We knew who the killers were, right? At least I knew who the killers were right from the get-go.
You had a pretty good idea.
It was a pretty, like, on the nose, like, okay, clearly it's going to be the boyfriend because he's acting like he's never heard a stab or he's never heard.
And because they keep saying, like, oh, it's always the boyfriend, so they're kind of, like, trying to throw you off when later they
and then the friend, it's like, she's the one character that's really not interacting with everybody else. So you think she's going to just be generic death number 4 in the film. You're like, no, she's not. She's actually going to be the fucking killer. And then when she's revealed as the killer, her performance goes straight down the shitter because she goes, I'm going to be like Matthew Lillard. It's like, no, you're not, because you're not as good as Matthew Lillard as the killer. And then just their whole explanation of it all was just kind of like, so we're basically just completely redoing Scream 1. Which is exactly what, and that was my main problem. Like, so we're literally doing in the same room, the same exact fucking scene all over again. And that was my problem. It's like a requel should not be a remake of the fucking film. You shouldn't be doing the same fucking scene over again. And then you also have the problem, which happens in a lot of the Scream movies, but this is the first time where I'm watching, I'm going, okay, going back and rewatching this movie, I know which time it's Jack Quaid and which time it's the girl. And there's one particular scene, and it's the Dewey death, where it's like, nope, there is no fucking chance in hell the girl could do what she did in this, because it couldn't be Jack Quaid, because he was in the fucking elevator with Barrera and Ortiz. Or is it Ortiz? No, Jenna Ortega. It's like, it can't be Jack Quaid because he's in the fucking elevator, so it has to be the girl. And the girl is able to fucking stab Dewey and lift his ass up. Like, no, You can't do it's like so like once you give away who the killers are, and then you go back and you start watching the movie, you're like, no, that doesn't match up. Like you can't. There's no way she could have done that. There's not. It just the movie starts to fall apart. And then of course, to me, one of the parts I hated the most is when they killed Marley Shelton's character, because that whole scene is just idiotic. Like she's the fucking sheriff. She turns around, runs home. She's calling for backup, all this kind of shit. Yet she gets there, gets killed in broad fucking daylight, right on the fucking front porch, and her son gets killed, and there's not a fucking siren in earshot.
In what is supposedly a small town.
It's like, this is a small fucking
town. It's not even coming from across the city.
Yeah, and then like not even an hour later, they're in the hospital, and it's a ghost town. It's like 6 o'clock at night. There's no one up there. It's like, and they're able to do that whole thing where Dewey does. Like, where the fuck is everybody?
Yeah,
it's just stuff like that where it's just like Wes Craven wouldn't have let that shit happen. Wes Craven's smarter than that. And the Ready or Not guys, Ready or Not's it's an okay horror film. I think if the fucking ending ruins that whole movie for me, it makes me not want to watch it because that ending, well, yes, over the top, it's like when I remember when they say that, like you ever hear something in the movie, you're like, please don't let that be the end, and then it is the end. You're like, God damn it, like don't do that. That's what Ready or Not was for me. So these guys, they got a great cast there outside of the girl killer. But it just didn't work for me. And I think everyone just so badly, and I think, like you said, you were forgiving about it when it first came out. I think everyone just so badly, and they so badly wanted to like see Scream back on the screen that everyone just was kind of like, this was amazing, this was great. It's like, did you pay attention to the movie?
It was a combination of wanting to Scream again and just wanting movies again, because you got to realize this came out in January, right?
It did.
When it was still kind of just coming out of pandemic kind of era, when movies are going to start kind of finally coming out again. You're like, okay, let's get some good movies in the theaters again.
Yeah, and it's just like, did you guys not pay attention to the film? Like, this film is lazily bad, and then, like I said, you have the whole ending that you and I have wrote a better ending for. Which please hire Brian and I. We'll fix Scream, and at least the ending will jump it up as full star because it'll make more fucking sense. But yeah, Scream was my number 2, and it was your 5. I did not make my worst list, so that's why I'm getting all this out now.
Yeah.
Because like I said, it's outside of all my issues, I think I still gave it 3 stars. It's my second to worst Scream movie, but it was a huge disappointment for me. Not my most disappointment, but it was my second one. Going to my number 4. My number 4 is actually in my honorable mention for worst of the year, so I'm actually going to not talk about my 4 just yet. What's your 4?
My number 4 is a recent one, just this past week. The Man from Toronto. Now,
I watched this last night, by the way. I will definitely be talking about this movie later. So this is all you, Brian.
So this is one. I mean, I was debating whether to include this in my most disappointed, simply because I didn't have high expectations for the movie. But it's like, it's an action, it's comedy. It's from the guy who did the Hitman's Bodyguard movies, which I know Sean doesn't love. I like the first one, I think was fun. The second one was kind of a mess. Okay, it was a total mess. But I mean, like I said, we have Woody Harrelson, Kevin Hart, who I actually do enjoy Kevin Hart in some films.
So do I.
The problem is when Kevin Hart is just allowed to go full Kevin Hart for the entire film, it's just like, oh my God, shut up. And that's really where they went with this movie. And while this movie had some action scenes that were fun, it had some comedy scenes that were fun, overall, it was just kind of like, I totally understand why it got sold off to Netflix.
Like I said, I'm going to be talking about this movie later, so I'm going to refrain.
I figured.
My number 3 is a movie that you and I were so excited for. We had been talking about this. We talked about it was in our top, I think our top 10 anticipated, and we were so excited to see this movie. And while the movie's not bad, it's got its issues. And you and I were both like, it was fine. But I think you and I both expected more, and that was Ambulance. Michael Bay. Brian and I are huge defenders of Michael Bay non-Transformers. And if you guys ever watch our actress director showcase, we talked about Bay on one of the episodes. We were pretty, I think it was right before Ambulance came out is when we talked about him. So it was like April's episode. We were pretty big advocates of Michael Bay. We love Michael Bay when it's not Transformers. And we were so excited for Ambulance. And Ambulance, it's exactly what it is. It's a 2.5 hours, right? Ambulance?
2 hours and 16 minutes.
It is it's about an hour 50 to 2 hours of a car chase that really should not have lasted that long, even in real time. And then about 20 minutes of other story. And while I enjoy the performances, Isa Gonzalez, we both loved in the movie, and Jake Gyllenhaal is having fun, and we love Jake Gyllenhaal when he gets to actually like just unleash and not feel refined, and he definitely does in this movie. And Yaya's great. I love Yaya. So like the three leads are great, but you have Michael Bay. Times, like I said, he goes too far Michael Bay like. He does this thing where some characters are just really, really fucking stupid, and it's in there just for comedy, and it doesn't flow with the rest of the film. And then you had this subplot with this it's a Mexican gang, I believe, that just is thrown in there to try to trick you into thinking, hey, Jake Gyllenhaal and Yahya are not really the villains. No, they fucking are the villains in this movie. They shot the cop. Like, granted, Yahya shot the cop because he was attacking Jake Gyllenhaal, but still, you still shot a cop, and you still probably killed how endless numbers of people during this car chase. If you tell me that no one dies at all during that entire chase scene throughout the 2 hours of this movie, I'm calling you a fucking liar, because there are some destructive car crashes in this movie that there's no chance people would survive in that film. And then they're still trying to frame these guys as they're not bad, they're heroes, cheer for them. And that was Brian's big problem with the movie. It was like, fucking no, they're bad in this film. Like, there's no redeeming thing. Just because Yaya's got a sick wife and a kid, that doesn't make him like free to do whatever the fuck he wants in this movie. And that's kind of was the problem. At the end of the day, it's like, I wanted to love this movie because it's Michael Bay doing what Michael Bay does best. But you made it hard to root for the characters. You rooted for the actors, not the characters. And it was just too long and too much of the same shit just being done on repeat. Plus, Garrett Dillahunt's character did not deserve the outcome that his character got in that film, because he was the one good guy in the movie. Did this end up on your disappointed, or did it not make your list?
This was my number one disappointment of the year so far.
One, so yeah.
So I'm just going to jump to that and talk about it. Because I mean, it's like you said, it's Michael Bay. I really enjoy Michael Bay movies outside of Transformers, and even some of the Transformers movies, honestly. It had a great cast. Everything about it, I thought it could be fun. You've already covered most of it, but yeah, I mean, you have characters who there's not. They try to treat them like these are the heroes, the good guys. You should root for them, but they're not. Like you said, Yaya, in the beginning, I thought, he's kind of a reluctant participant. They were going to rob was a bank or something. They're going to rob a bank, but it's like, but he was kind of reluctant. He just, he's pushed into this is like his only option to save his daughter's life. I get that. And if the rest of the movie was him kind of being a reluctant participant, and that was the extent of it, maybe him trying to prevent other people from getting hurt and dying and things in the process, that's fine. But he is an active participant in this movie. He's shooting people. He's part of this thing where they're driving. Like you said, countless deaths and injuries, both directly and indirectly, he's also responsible for. So he's not a good guy, even though they try to treat him one right up to the very end. The only good person in this movie is Isa Gonzalez, who, obviously beautiful.
And Garrett Dillahunt.
Good actress, great. Well, I mean, in the chase, but yes, also Garrett Dillahunt. But these two characters were kind of given the least to do. There's plot holes throughout the whole thing. You got Michael Bay playing with his new toy drones, which there's absolutely a place for drones in filming of movies. I've seen them used so very well. You can even use them in the dynamic ways that he does, but he does it so much. He puts it so overload in this movie. I mean, you can tell when he had it like flying like underneath cars as they would be jumping across, and then doing those dives off the buildings. Like, it just seems like a kid with his new toy out in the backyard filming these things. And it's like, it can be a good tool, but in moderation, dude. So that gets annoying. And it's just a movie that had so much potential based on everybody involved in it. And again, it's not one of the worst movies of the year. It's actually in my top third still of the movies I've seen this year so far. But it was really disappointing.
Yeah, I forgot. I blinked out about the fucking drone cameras. Like, it was nauseating at points. It's like using it during the chase sequences is great, but they were using them as transition shots, like shooting up a building and down a building and foot to 360. And it's like, bro, like I don't have vertigo, but people who do are gonna have problems with this fucking film. Yeah, like I said, we both didn't give it like a bad review by any means, but it was just like we had way higher expectations for that movie than it probably deserved. All I've got left is my number one. And you just said
I have 3 and 2 left, but they're both on my worst list, so we'll talk about those later.
Okay, so we're talking about. So okay, we're just gonna go ahead and go to my number one. What do you think it is? Let's be like, you know me. What's my number one most disappointing film of the year so far?
I don't want to say.
Why? Because it's in your best list.
It's Jurassic World Dominion.
It's fucking Jurassic World Dominion. Look, I could go on and on and on about this movie, but we literally just shot like an hour and a half spoiler review, like not even 3 weeks ago. I said this earlier, I anticipated. I'm terrified. I was terrified of this movie because of how Fallen Kingdom went, and it's like, but I'm hopeful because of the OG cast and Trevorrow is back from Jurassic World, and that it was going to. I was hopeful that the movie was going to be good. The movie's not bad, but it's also not good either. It is a train wreck of a movie. They focus on the wrong things in the film that none of us really give a shit about. The OG cast is really not needed in this film. Chris Pratt maybe says no more than 2 lines in the entire film at one given time. And you did the one thing that you should never do on a Jurassic World movie is you put the dinosaurs on the fucking back burner. There's a whole lot more wrong with this movie. And if you guys want to hear what Brian and I have to say about Jurassic World Dominion, watch our spoiler review where we literally dissect that film all the way. But yeah, Jurassic World Dominion, definitely disappointed through that film. It probably will stay definitely in the at least the top 2, top 3 going into the end of the year. Spoiler. Yeah, that movie just made me sad. It made me really, really sad. The movie that we got promised, Brian, is not the movie that we got, and that was a disappointment right there. So that's our top 5 disappointed. We're gonna go ahead into surprising right now. Now, for me, and I'll say 6 because honorable mention is usually our 6th movie. 5 out of my 6, or I'm sorry, not 5. 4 out of my 6 are in my top 10. So I'm only going to talk about 2 of them right now. How many of your surprising are in your top 10?
Currently, just because there's still a lot of movies come out this year, all 5 of my surprises are in my top 10. I will say my honorable mention that is not in the top 10 is Dog.
I have not seen Dog, so
with Channing Tatum and a dog. I don't know the name. There's not really any of the names, and there's some kind of supporting cameo roles from like Kevin Nash, from Ethan Suplee. I think Bill Burr shows up in there, but the only main cast member in this is Channing Tatum and this dog. And this is a movie that I didn't have huge expectations for. It's Channing Tatum. It's the first movie I think that he's directed, although he actually co-directed it with another guy.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So I was curious because obviously it's a story that he wanted to make. Apparently he had. I don't know if he knew the guy or had heard this story, whatever. He decided he wanted to make a film of this, and he decided he wanted to direct it and star in it. And it is exactly what you expect it to be. You watch the trailer, you know exactly what the movie's going to be. You know how it starts, you know how it ends, you know everything that's going to happen in between. So I was kind of like, I'll check it out. But I've seen the trailer. I think I've seen the entire movie.
That's why I didn't see it, because it's like I already know the movie.
And I went and saw it, and I was right. I mean, you know all the major beats of the story. But I still just really enjoyed it. Maybe it's just because that, animal lover in me and the whole boy and his dog kind of feel to it. But I mean, I really enjoyed the story. I thought Channing did a great job. Again, I don't know what he did as far as directing versus his co-director, but it was well made. So I mean, it was just a runner-up because it didn't amaze me. It wasn't in my top 10 or anything, but it was like, this is a solid film. Whereas I expected it to be just kind of like,
And you said all the rest of yours is in your top 10.
The rest of my 5 are all in my top 10.
So I'm going to go through my 2 real quick. My number 5 and my number 4. So my honorable mention is in my top 10, and then my top 3 are in my top 10. So my number 5 is a movie, once again, like most Netflix films, which this isn't a Netflix film, but it's a streaming service film. These movies just pop up in, like I said, 2 weeks before release. You're like, oh, okay, I'll check this movie out. And this one was kind of the same. It popped up on my feed, and it popped up right around the same time, or right, I think, after the end of this one actor's portrayal of another character that we know and love. So to see him go from this to this and go, okay, you color me intrigued. And then watch the movie and actually be relatively impressed with it is why this one was in my most surprising, and that is Hulu's Fresh. Fresh was a movie that did not know about, had zero expectations for, but after Falcon Winter Soldier stuff came out last year, you have this thing where, hey, everyone loves Sebastian Stan, right? Cool. You want to see him as a villain? Not only a villain, but like as like this like cannibal guy kind of thing. And he's playing it super eccentric, like he's making the food, he's dancing and mimicking and all this. I was like, so he's having fun with this role, and he has a blast playing this character. And then also it introduced to me what's her name, Daisy Edgar Jones, who we're going to be seeing here. I think was it next month in the Where the Crawdads Sing. She went from like I never heard of this girl before to now she just keeps popping up. Like she also was in was it Under the Banner Haven? That's Andrew Garfield's little like
Under the Banner of Heaven, yeah.
Under the Banner of Heaven. She popped up in that. Like she all of a sudden is just now showing up everywhere. But she actually I thought was really, really good in this film. It's not from Alex Garland, but to me it was kind of very much like an ex machina kind of film, but not sci-fi, where it's like you have, she's kind of fed up with dating apps, so she has a meet cute with Sebastian Stan like in the vegetable aisle at a grocery store. And they basically go on this trip together, and she basically gets drugged and basically kidnapped by Sebastian Stan. And I'm not going to go into the full details of what he is, because that's kind of the bread and butter of this film. But then you have her kind of like basically needing to kind of almost like Stockholm Syndrome herself in order to try to survive. And watching her try to work her way into getting Sebastian Stan on her good side and kind of working her way through this so she could try to survive was actually a really well thought out and really good film. Now, the third act does kind of fall apart a little bit, but I still enjoyed the movie quite a bit. Didn't crack my top 10, but definitely was one of those movies where I went in with like, all right, let's see what this is. And halfway watching, I was like, this is actually a pretty damn good movie. And I'm enjoying the hell out of the two leads' performances. So that's why it popped up in my top 5. You had not seen this yet, right?
No, I saw it.
Or did you finally see it?
I did. I saw it about a week after you did.
Yeah.
It for me was just fine. It was I didn't love it, didn't hate it. It very much feels like because it's one of those that came out like Sundance Film Festival. It very much feels like a Sundance version of a horror movie, and it was fine. It was I like the performances, especially Sebastian Stan. It just didn't love it the way you did.
Yeah, no, it's fine. And my number 4 is a movie that once again was not my most anticipated, but we went in with it was almost anticipated, but I was so terrified for this movie to suck. I was prepared for the movie to suck. And the only reason why it's not my most surprising is by the end of the day, I was like, it actually wasn't that bad. I don't love it, but it wasn't that bad. And that's Uncharted. This movie should have been a train wreck. This movie should have fallen apart. This movie should have been a fiery airplane ride into the ocean, which happens in the movie. But it still kind of worked. Tom Holland, everyone was worried about Tom Holland playing Nathan Drake. I think he does a solid job playing a young Drake. And by the third act, when you really get into the Unchartedness of the movie, I was watching and they hit the score from the Uncharted video games, which is my favorite video game series of all time. I was finally watching going, I see it. I see Tom Holland as Nathan Drake now. Great. Okay, you had me sold. The only thing that didn't work for me was Mark Wahlberg as Sully, because it still should have been Bruce Campbell. But Mark Wahlberg's just playing Mark Wahlberg. He has no essence of Sully from the video games. He's just basically being Mark Wahlberg. The action stuff is fine. The treasure hunting to the manipulation and stabbing in the back kind of stuff, it does run a little tired because they do too much in it. And there's one scene to this day still bugs the fuck out of me because they're trying not to get it wouldn't even have gotten them an R rating. But there's a death of a person in the film. Their throat gets slashed. And for some reason, no blood.
Not a drop.
Not a drop of blood. And it's one thing if you do a quick thing and that's it. But no, the camera decides, let's focus on
this. The person, and then later on when they're laying on the floor, there's not a puddle or anything. There's not a drop on the floor.
Let's keep focusing on the body of this dead person with no blood in it. And it's like, guys, like, did you not think? Like, I get you. This is, you don't want
PG-13, but
yeah, it's PG-13. You don't want a huge thing of blood. I get that, but don't fucking keep putting the camera on the fucking body. And then probably one of the worst product placements since Power Rangers with Papa John's. But at the end of the day, it really could have been a hell of a lot worse. And so that's why it popped up in my surprising. Now, you tried to play the Uncharted games, but you don't like sitting and listening to watching a story fold out. You just want to go in and play a game, which you've said that to me many times. Because, guys, you know how many times I've tried to say, dude, you should play this game. You should play this game. And you're like, I was bored. It's like, how the fuck are you bored?
I'm an old man. Give me a break.
You just went into it just wanting to watch a movie. So I think you liked it more than I did.
I will be talking about this later.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that means it cracked. It's either in your worst or your best. And I know you didn't hate the movie, so it's probably in your best. So that's my surprising. Like I said, the rest of it is going to be in my top 10, and the rest of all Brian's is going to be in the top 10. So we're just going to go ahead and jump into our top 10 worst films of the year. Yeah. Now, granted, at 8 years in, this could be a lot. This will probably change up quite a bit. I'd say probably like our 6 through 11 may or may not still be on this list at the end of the year, but they're on it right now. My honorable mention, which was also my number 4 in most disappointing. So I'm going to go ahead and get it out of the way so that way I can just kind of double dip on it, is a movie that I was excited for. Brian, you said after the first trailer, you were like, I'm not excited for this movie anymore. But I was like, I still think this is going to be really, really good. And it was okay at best. And that was The Lost City. When I saw that first trailer with Channing Tatum, Sandra Bullock, Daniel Radcliffe, and then the little tease at the end with Brad Pitt, I was like, this movie's going to be fun. This movie's going to be so much fun. I'm excited for this. It's Sandra Bullock going back to being like Sandra Bullock, and Channing Tatum is making fun of himself, which you always said is for Brian and I, that is the top tier thing. And then Brad Pitt also top tier thing. And Radcliffe is a bad guy. How can this not fail? It can fail because the story is fucking boring as shit. And it's not, it really takes not necessarily the essence of everything that we love about all those characters out of the equation, because Brad Pitt's great in it. In the 5 minutes he's in the movie, Radcliffe is a solid villain in the film, but the chemistry between Tatum and Bullock is non-existent. It's like, oh, pretty person, kiss. No, it doesn't work. Sandra Bullock's character is relatively unlikable through most of this fucking film, and Tatum's just kind of there because they're not trying to make Tatum be like this action star guy, because the whole point of his character is that he's the guy that they paint, that they use as the model. So he's not supposed to be this action star guy. But then by the end of the film, it's like, okay, we got to have Channing Tatum do some action. So let's just make him just stumble his way into being an action hero. And ultimately, the movie itself is like, it's fine, but it was just, it wasn't what we expected it was going to be. Now, you knew exactly what the movie was going to be because you saw the trailer. So this was probably not a shock for you. But for me, it was my honorable mention for worst film of the year. Is it in your worst or?
This was my number 6 worst film of the year. Again, here's a couple things. One, it probably won't be there at the end of the year.
The movie's not actively bad. It's just.
And 2, that's the thing is, even if you look at my worst list, a lot of only the bottom few do I really hate. Everything else is just kind of like, because we are not professional movie critics in the traditional sense. So we will not watch every single movie that comes out just because we have to watch it. So there's a lot of shit that I'm just like, I'm not even going to bother watching that.
Yeah, movie. we probably should have prefaced that before we started our worst thing. We're not going to watch these movies that are actively look bad. We're only going to watch movies that we actually want to see. So our worst list is like, wow, you really think that's one of the worst films of the year? Yeah, of what we watched.
No,
we're not going to go watch a whole
so far, this is my number 6 worst movie.
Yeah.
For all the same reasons Sean already gave. I think in my review, I think I gave it 2 stars and said that's 1 star for Brad Pitt and 1 star for Daniel Radcliffe, and that's all it gets from me. Because the rest of the movie, the problem is it's supposed to be this comedy, but it's supposed
to be like a Romancing the Stone remake.
But it's got no laughs at all in this movie. And if there's things that they drag on forever, these gags they drag out, which they clearly think are hilarious, but they just weren't for me. The chemistry, like you said, was non-existent. Now, early on in the film, I thought that was okay because it seemed like it was going to be like he's trying to get her respect and approval because obviously she's an older actress. And I thought it wasn't going to try to be a romantic thing. But then at the end, when they try to force it into a romantic thing, I'm like, ugh, they're even trying to force that in there when there already wasn't any chemistry, but now to try and force it into romantic is kind of really stepping over the line. Channing Tatum, I like when he does comedy. This is kind of what I would expect him to be like in his early comedy days, but but he managed to hit it out of the park pretty early on, like 21 Jump Street. Because here it just feels like he's trying too hard to be funny. But again, I blame the script, actually, not him for that. So yeah, this is just a movie that I just did not find funny at all.
What was your honorable mention?
My honorable mention for worst film of the year was actually Hotel Transylvania, Transformania.
I have not seen a single one of these fucking films, so I have no input to this.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, it's not a film I hated. I think I actually gave this one like 2.5 or 3 stars. It's just, yeah, 2.5, because it's just there. It's the very epitome of a franchise that's just like, okay, here's another one. You know, it's
Especially since it didn't even get released in theaters, right? It went to
it's the
Amazon.
same. It was Amazon Prime. Yeah, it's the same characters doing the same gags. Adam Sandler didn't even come back to voice Dracula. They had some other guy voicing him.
Oh, I didn't even know that. I thought he was still doing it.
Oh yeah, no, Adam Sandler's new.
Oh wow, that's the death of the franchise. There,
Somebody named Brian Hull apparently does the voice.
Wow, I did not know.
So basically, probably some Adam Sandler impersonator or something. But it's just this movie that is just so very blah. There's occasional laughs here and there, but it's one that if it hadn't come out on Amazon, I'm not sure I would have ever gone to theaters to see it. I probably would not have, and I'd probably never going to watch it again. So it's not anything I actively hate, but it's just
yeah, I've seen parts of it, but nothing to make me actually like actively want to watch it.
And I actually enjoy the other ones to different extents.
Yeah. My number 10, once again, it's not a movie that I hated. It was just kind of like, it is what it is, and that was Death on the Nile. Great cast, but I ultimately just did not give a shit about this movie at all. Gal Gadot looks gorgeous in the film. Her character doesn't really fucking matter much. Kenneth Branagh is great in the role. Tom Bateman, I enjoyed quite a bit. But you have Russell Brand in it, who's really not worth anything in the film. That's not necessarily against him. It's just the script. Annette Bening is annoying as fuck throughout the whole film. Honestly, the one person that I actually really, really enjoyed, I'm trying to find her name here because she's for some reason not popping up on the main cast on the IMDb. Letitia Wright, not worth being in the film. Emma McKay, that's who I really liked, was Emma McKay. Really enjoyed her performance in the film to the point where I was like, I'm paying attention to this girl. I actually really want to see her in more things. But it looks good. It looks great, but the plot is just meh the whole way through. I mean, also Rose, who we love from Game of Thrones, Rose Leslie, also completely wasted in the film. You had this cast and you just didn't really utilize them. Like where someone like Knives Out, you've got that great cast, but they're all used and utilized to their fullest to the point that they all have their moments. And Death on the Nile really just didn't give us much of anything. And by the time when the ending happened, you're like, okay, like I don't really give a shit about the twist. And so, like I said, it wasn't a bad movie. It was just kind of like, eh. But that's why
I thought Murder on the Orient Express, which had this great cast, and I thought was pretty meh, honestly.
Yeah.
And so when this one came out, I didn't have a whole lot of anticipation for it, but I was going to go see it. But then I heard all the reviews are pretty much the same as you said, and the same as I expected. So I was just like, I'm in no rush to see it, and I still haven't. So
I'll go ahead and go to my number 9 because I know you already did your 6. My number 9 is a Netflix film that actively I was like, I know this is going to be really, really, really bad, but because of the plot or because of what the subject matter is, I have to check it out. And that was Netflix's Home Team. And here's the thing. I didn't hate the movie. I really, really didn't. But that's how bad Happy Madison is at most of its films, that even at I think I gave it 2.5 stars. That's actually one of my favorite Happy Madison movies. It's still a fucking bad movie, but I actually didn't hate the movie. You got Kevin James playing Sean Payton, which I don't understand the resemblance of the two in the movie. It's basically like Mighty Ducks for football. That's basically what the film is. And it's harmless. It really is. It's harmless. There's maybe 2 or 3 scenes that's Happy Madison-like that you're just like, if you took those 2-3 scenes out, this actually is a average to decent film, but you have to throw in these Happy Madison things that just don't work. Taylor Lautner actually is really solid in the film, which I haven't seen Taylor Lautner do anything good ever. and he was passable in the films. Kevin James is good. No Adam Sandler in the film, luckily. But it wasn't bad, but it's still a Happy Madison movie, which is why it's still ranked in there. But it was one of those movies where it's like, it's in my 10 worst, but I didn't hate the movie at all. But it's not a movie that I would actually actively go back and rewatch. But it's one of those where people go, "Movie, how is this movie?" It's like, if you like Happy Madison, it's probably gonna be one of the best Happy Madison movies you've ever seen. If you hate Happy Madison, you'll be okay with it, but it's not gonna like change your mind on the movies. And you refuse to see it because it's Happy Madison.
I have no interest in that.
Yeah. So what was your 9?
My number 10, actually.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting we went to your 6. So yeah, what's your 10?
My number 10 was also my number 2 disappointment of the year, and that is The Bubble. Was that Netflix? It was Netflix.
Yeah, it's Netflix.
So yeah, this is one that it's one of those things that you get excited for based on the cast involved, the director involved. You got Judd Apatow directing, of course, which means you have Leslie Mann. He also has his daughter Iris Apatow. You got Karen Gillan. You got Maria Bakalova, who made a huge, great debut in the Borat sequel. David Duchovny, who I haven't seen in a long time, because he can be a funny guy when he wants to be. Keegan-Michael Key. So it's got this great cast, and they're like, let's go during the pandemic. Let's go create this bubble of our own at this resort somewhere to film a movie about a cast and crew creating a bubble in a mansion somewhere to film a movie. It's like, sure, that'll be great. It's Judd Apatow. It's got a bunch of great talent to it. And as I watched the movie, I just grew more and more and more disinterested as these jokes mostly fell flat. It has its moments. There are funny moments, funny lines here and there, but really the miss to hit ratio is huge. And it's a one that I don't think I'll ever watch again. And it seems like such a waste of talent.
This was my number 6. Movie.
Pedro Pascal, I forgot to mention him. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I said it while you were talking.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah. This is my number 6 worst film of the year, and for all the reasons that you said, I was super excited for this because of the cast, because of the director, because I love Judd Apatow, and yeah, it had some moments, but like I said, the negatives outweigh the positives greatly in this film. Most of the characters are unlikable. There's not really a character for you to actively root for in the film. It's really not funny, but here's the main problem. It's fucking 2.5 hours long. And
Judd Apatow movies are always way too long, and always just like casts all his friends and family, which I think Iris Apatow is talented, but her character in this I wanted to murder. When they have a whole bunch of TikTok dances and stuff, I'm like, oh.
I actually didn't hate her character in the movie at all. I think she was fine. But it's 2.5 hours long, and there's about a good 40 minutes that you could have cut from this film. And it just...
Leslie Mann just disappears. One of the best things about the movie just disappears.
He just disappears in the movie. And oh, God, it was almost painful to get through because it was so long. I was like, I kept waiting for this. And then you have, like, the tick-tocking dinosaur, and then you have let's add the penises on the dinosaur at the end, which is like, I get this. This is supposed to be just utterly ridiculous to a point, but it's like at 2.5 hours, I don't care anymore. Wrap it the fuck up. And yeah, it's a movie that I'll probably never rewatch. And I love Apatow films, but oh my God, this movie was painful. It was painful how bad it was. And that cast too. It's been a while since there's been a cast that's been that stacked and the movie be that bad, especially with the director at hand. Like usually you get a stacked cast, but a shitty director. It's very, very rare you get a stacked cast with a shitty director and the movie be that bad of a film. What was your 9, right?
So my 9 was my last remaining disappointment. It was my number 3 disappointment of the year, and that is Moonfall.
I still haven't seen Moonfall, so.
Yeah, this is one. Now, Moonfall is a movie that was never going to be high art. It was never going to be a top 10 film of the year or anything like that. But it's Roland Emmerich getting back to just watching the world burn and just get destroyed. That's what he does best. That's how he makes great entertainment. Day After Tomorrow, Independence Day, all these kind of movies. That's what he's best at. It's just popcorn cinema that's not trying to be anything great. And so that's what I went in expecting. I'm like, this is a great idea of like, oh, the moon is like out of its orbit and the gravity is causing all those natural disasters. And then somehow I couldn't figure out how these astronauts to Earth were going to try and, I guess, fix the moon's orbit or whatever to stop this thing. That's the movie I thought I was getting. But then by the time I think the last trailer got released, which I actually managed to avoid, but I went back and saw it after I watched the movie. The last trailer was finally revealing the real plot was that there's basically sentient organism that lives inside the moon that's causing all this stuff to happen, and it's actually has to do with like millions of years ago. It's basically like Prometheus, but the blockbuster version of it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And so the whole plot of it, if it stuck to the just Earth natural destruction movie, it could have been great. But they had to add in that plot. And then you have the characters who, I mean, again, you have Halle Berry, you have Patrick Wilson, you have the guy whose name I don't recall from Game of
From
Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
He had a big year. He's a bunch of stuff. John Bradley, I think was his name.
Yeah, it's John Bradley.
Michael Pena's in it. Donald Sutherland is in it. So I mean, you have again, they assemble a good cast, but these characters are just so moronic. Every line of dialogue was painful to listen to, whether it was trying to be technical jargon that was not coming across anything but laughable, or it was trying to be jokes that you didn't laugh at. So it was just a movie that, you know, I was willing to accept it for the popcorn, just entertainment that it is, but it even disappointed on that level.
Yeah, I saw the first trailer. I was like, nope, I'm not making myself put myself through this movie. So I saw the honest trailer, and the honest trailer was enough for me to go, oh, I would have hated this film, and it definitely would have been on my list had I watched the movie, but I just couldn't put myself through it. My number 8 is a movie that you talked about earlier, and that is The Man from Toronto. Once again, is it going to be in my worst at the end of the year? No, it's average. It's fine for what it is. I mean, I didn't like it, but like I said, you got Kevin Hart. He goes too far, Kevin Hart, with it. There's one scene where he just keeps talking, and I'm just like, dude, shut up. Like, this scene should have ended a good minute or two earlier, but they just let Kevin Hart just keep rambling on for a long period of time. Didn't need it. Woody Harrelson's fine in the film. I have nothing against Woody Harrelson in the movie. The third act action sequence to me was the part where I'm going, am I liking this film? And then it kept going. I was like, no, nope. This movie's just it's a mess. Nothing in this film is plausible or makes any sense whatsoever. And then, like I said, like the whole big third act actually was shot very, very well. No cops whatsoever in that third. I'm like, where the fuck are the cops during all this shit? And they finally show up at the very, 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 very end. It's like, I'm sorry, like when you do certain scenes like that and you're doing the damage that they're doing at that moment and no cops are showing up, I'm sorry. You literally take me out of the film. But it's a mindless Netflix film. It's a fun action comedy for Netflix people, but for us rating stuff, it's not a good film at all. But I mean, what do you expect when you get a Netflix film? It's either going to be really, really good, or it's going to be like, what did you expect kind of movie. So, like I said, it's in my top 8, or it's in my number 8. Is it going to be in my top 10 at the end of the year? No. It's just going to be one of those, like, I'll forget about this movie ever existing unless it's for trivia purposes. What is you're on your 8 now, right?
My number 8 worst film of the year is not a movie I hate. It's just a movie that was and it actually was on my consideration for my disappointments list, and that is a movie called Studio 666. This is basically a movie with the Foo Fighters. Basically made a movie about, like, they play themselves. Basically, they're in the band. They go to this secluded house somewhere to record a new album because they want to get together and just lock themselves in the house to come up with it. But of course, the house is haunted and blah blah blah. And supposedly all this great gore and violence and demon possession and all this stuff ensues, and a lot of comedy to it. And the trailer looked great, and I thought this could be fun. It's not going to be, anything great, but it'll be enjoyable. And Dave Grohl has shown himself to be a pretty funny guy, just whether it be in interviews or whether it be popping up in roles in, like, Bill and Ted Face the Music or Tenacious D, where he plays the devil, things like that. So I had, decent hopes for this movie, and so I went and saw it, and the biggest problem is that it's way too long. Basically, they had an idea for a story and stretched it out to a full-length movie. I think I said in my review that this would make a really great long-form music video, especially for fans of the band who like all the people in the band and would like to see them kind of acting and playing versions of themselves. It'd make a good, like, half-hour short movie or something like that.
Like Thriller.
Yeah, like Thriller. But this is not that, because not only is it too long, it seriously drags for like a good hour in the middle. There's like a good beginning and good end and just scattered scenes throughout that are worthwhile. But everyone in the band, including Dave Grohl, but not to the same extent, are horrible, horrible actors. There's 2 guys, especially in the band. I don't know their names, but they're acting. They can't even read a single line convincingly. It's just like, oh my gosh, if they were not the band members, they would never get cast in a role trying to act ever in anything, because it's so bad. And so this is just I don't hate the movie, but it's of the ones I saw, it's definitely one of the worst I've seen.
My number 7. This is just a mind-numbingly boring, dull film. Will it end my top 10 worst? I'm sure there's probably going to be some movies worse than this by the time of the end of the year. But that is Peacock's Firestarter. It's dreadfully boring. It's supposed to be it's not Stephen King, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stephen King, yeah. It's supposed to be a Stephen King horror movie, remake from the 80s with Drew Barrymore, and they can't decide whether they want to make a horror movie or they want to make an origin story for an X-Men hero. And that's the main problem with this film, is that it's not a horror film. It's a superhero film that wants to be Brightburn, but never hits what Brightburn tried to do. Zac Efron's in the movie. You can tell he's trying his best, but dude deserves way better. This is something, like you said, with Channing Tatum and Lost City. This is something he would do early in his career, not something that he would do now in his career. The girl's not bad. The story is just boring as shit. And then the movie just has an abrupt ending. You're like, that's the fucking end of this movie? Like, it got to the point where, like, as the credits were rolling, I went back and read the plot for the 1980s version of the film. And I was like, oh shit, on paper, this movie just sounds way fucking better than the movie that I just sat here watching. And it's just a dreadfully dull, boring ass film. And I felt bad for Zac Efron having to be a part of it. Did you see this movie? I can't remember if you did or not.
Yeah, this is my number 4 worst film I've seen so far this year, for pretty much all the same reasons. If you took the 1983, 85, I don't know what it is, 83,
yeah, I can't remember what the exact year was.
Version, and it's got a great story to it, a great basic story to it, because obviously from the book it must have had a good story to it, and made that with today's, the effects they can do better. You get a great cast of actors together. You could make a good movie of this, but they changed so much of it to try and, like you said, it almost feels like an X-Men origin story of some kind. And then the cast you do have is mostly nobodies. A couple people you recognize in supporting roles, and then you have Zac Efron, who I just felt bad for, because I don't know. I can see the appeal to him. It's like Stephen King's It and Doctor Sleep and all these things have been big hits. Like, sure, I'll be a Stephen King movie, and he gets stuck with this one, which his character was completely bland and boring, pointless, and I don't think any other actor would have done much more than Zac Efron did with it.
They literally rip off a scene from Logan. The movie. They basically pull a Logan in the film. It is not deserved of a Logan scene.
Yeah, and honestly, this movie just feels like this feels like it should have been direct to video direct. But.
Oh yeah. I am now at my number 5. So let's go with you two. You get to your 5.
My number 7. This will be quick because it's a movie you have probably not even heard of. It's called Fistful of Vengeance. This is a movie starring Iko Uwais from The Raid and The Raid 2, among other things. It's got Louis Tan, who is also in some of the Raid movies. He was also in Mortal Kombat, your favorite movie, among other things. He's been in a few other things as well, but other than that, it's not a lot of no names in it. So I went into this watching it because obviously
you're hoping for a Night Comes For Us situation.
Well, yeah, I was hoping for that because the trailer actually looked decent. It didn't look quite Night Comes For Us level, but it had it's these good martial art action guys in it. So I thought I'd check it out. What I didn't know when I saw it, I didn't know it until I think right before I went and saw the movie, is that it's actually the movie culmination, the continuation of a Netflix series called Woo Assassins, which I knew they were on, but I didn't watch it. But apparently this movie was like the wrap-up movie of it. But knowing that before I went in, like right before I went in, was actually good because it lowered my expectations quite a bit. Because I'm like, because I checked out like an episode of the series at one point, or I think I was going to, and decided not to because it just looked really low budget and bad. And the movie is just non-budget. I mean, low budget and bad. It was very disappointing. The action scenes aren't even done well, which is the one thing it could have had going for it. The plot is your typical direct-to-video convoluted stuff. So I mean, it's again, it's not a terrible movie that I hate, but it's easily one of the worst movies I've seen this year. My number 6 was Lost City. My number 5. Did I go up to that? Am I going or are you going?
You can go.
My number 5 worst movie of the year. Worst movie for me that I've seen this year. Put all these qualifications on it. The Black Phone.
The what?
The Black Phone.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So this one just came out recently, of course. Ethan Hawke in a Scott Derrickson movie. Uh, I was not super excited about this movie going in because all those kind of sinister, insidious paranormal activity, they all kind of run together for me. The Conjuring movies, even. Ethan Hawke, I like sometimes I don't. Scott Derrickson, even he's had some good movies. He's had some that didn't appeal to me. But I went and saw this thinking it would at least be enjoyable. And Ethan Hawke does fine. He overacts in a few scenes, but he's fine in it. And it definitely has its moments to it, especially the last 5 minutes, the last 5 or 10 minutes of the movie, I think are really well done. And there's a few like brief moments of creepy images and stuff that kind of give us excitement. But for the most part, I was just bored to death in this movie for the majority of the running time. It's one of those that it's getting great reviews. Everyone else seems to love, and more power to them. But what this list is for me, one of the worst movies I've seen this year, just because it just did nothing for me.
I will be talking about this movie later. So
on a very different list, I assume.
Yes, on a very different list. Okay. My number 5 is a movie that I think you and I were excited for all the naughty reasons. And that is Hulu's Deep Water. This is a movie that was literally advertised as a super, super sexy, like almost like a Gone Girl
erotic thriller kind of thing.
Yeah, with Ana de Armas and Ben Affleck, which you and I, we both love Ana de
From
Armas.
the director of things like 9.5 Weeks. So
exactly. Yeah. So we were kind of sold like, oh, it's gonna be a super sexy. Ana de Armas is gonna be like basically having sex all the time, which it's not wrong in a way. And then what we get is, yes, Ana de Armas is sexy in the film, but it's just a dreadfully boring, drawn out film with Ben Affleck and snails and this. It's trying to play it off like it's a mystery and like you don't know what's going on, but it's like, no, they pretty much tell us what's going on right from the get-go. And then it's like, are we going to go somewhere with this at some point, or is this just going to be us watching their lives for the next 2 hours as she basically cock teases him for most of the film? Yep, that's basically what the film is. And then the movie just kind of ends. And the performances in the film are not that great. I'm blanking on the one dude's name in the movie who is like, he's the neighbor. I'm looking it up real quick. He's the neighbor who's like onto Ben Affleck and what he's doing and all this kind of shit. And he's a well-renowned Tracy Letts. He's a well-known actor, but oh my God, his performance in this film is garbage. It is so bad. And yes, Ana de Armas is gorgeous, and I like Ben Affleck as an actor, but this movie is horrible. And not all the sexiness of Ana de Armas in the world will make me sit down and watch this movie again. And I think you said you watched parts of the movie.
No, I literally watched, as far as actually watching, I think I only watched the first 20 to 30 minutes of the movie, and I was like, no.
Yeah. It's not good. So this didn't even make your top 10? No, because you didn't watch the
I haven't
whole
seen it.
thing.
I have not seen it.
Thing, so yeah, that was my number 5. All right, so we both did our 5s.
My 4 I already talked about was Firestarter, so I just have my top 3 left.
Okay, so I'll go to my number 4. My number 4, this was not a movie that I expected to like. So it didn't obviously win me over because it's my number 4 worst movie of the year. But it was one of those where it's like I watched it, because I needed stuff for my worst films of the year. Sometimes Brian will do this to himself. I'll do this to myself where it's like, I know this movie's probably going to be bad, like Home Sweet Home Alone. I heard so many horrible things about it. I was like, I gotta watch it. And then it was like, yep, it's the worst film of the year. This one was like, I think my 3 and my 4, I was like, I know these are going to be bad, but I'm going to make myself watch them just so I have something to put in my worst. But maybe it'll shock me. They didn't. My number 4 is Netflix's Senior Year. Rebel Wilson.
Yeah, I didn't do that to myself.
She has, like Amy Schumer, she has moments of funniness, but then she decides, I'm going to crank it up to an 11. I'm just going to keep doing the same shit over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, to the point where she's nauseating to, I don't want to listen to her. I don't want to see her. I don't want to watch anything that she's in. So the whole main plot of this, and the whole, I think, main reason they made this movie is because she lost a ton of weight. Good for her. Awesome for her that she lost all the weight. But they wanted to kind of make almost like a pseudo never been kissed-esque kind of film for her. Problem is that the film is not funny. It's offensive at points. And then you do something which I think was just a disservice for Rebel Wilson in the film, is that she's supposed to be this young teenage, like, cheerleader, popular girl at school, or at least one of the popular girls in school. And then when she comes back from her coma 20 years later, she goes back and tries to be a cheerleader again, which maybe that's just something that was like a dream of Rebel Wilson to do. But the problem is that you keep putting her in these scenes with these tight clothes. And yes, she lost a lot of weight, but she hasn't, like, toned up her excess skin at certain points. And like I said, I'm not fat shaming her or body loss shaming her. Good for her. I'm fucking happy for her. But when there are situations where you're putting her in situations where she needs to be wearing tight fit clothes, or she needs to be doing stuff that's supposed to make her look extra sexy, they use a body double to do these scenes. And it's not, like, even well hidden. You can tell it's 100% not Rebel Wilson, because then there are other scenes where they're making her wear, like, shorts or like a skirt or whatever, and you can see the loose skin and stuff like that, which, like I said, no big deal. But then don't, like, 10 minutes later put her in, like, a super sexy cheerleading outfit and do, like, this super sexy rendition, and you can tell that is not the same person. That's not the same body that we've been watching throughout the film. And at the end of the movie, you got the whole prom thing, and she does this whole leotard dance, which I'm like, okay, cool. Like, it's empowering, but it's not empowering when you have to use a body double for Rebel Wilson, because that's not empowering. You're basically going, look, like, clearly you're not going to look as sexy as we're intending in this moment, so we're going to use another person who's in better shape. To me, that's the exact opposite of what you're wanting out of this film by replacing her for somebody who's tighter, I guess, in a way as you want to use it. And, like, the movie itself is just not funny. I think there's maybe one part in the movie where they go see Deep Impact in a theater that actually made me laugh out loud at one moment. Other than that, it tries too much to do, like, the whole wokeness thing, which I have no problem with being woke or whatever the hell the term you want to use, but it goes so over the top with it. You're just like, oh my God. And it's just not a good movie. And I actually don't even blame Rebel Wilson in this. Rebel Wilson's just Rebel Wilson, except skinnier in the movie. And she's still basically playing the same shtick, the same act. But it's one of those movies that, like, if they really, really, really wanted her to do this, they should have given her another couple years to just kind of be in that shape that she wants to be in, so they don't use a body double. Like, don't do that. Like, embrace her for what she is. Like, embrace it. But then you're having to explain, like, how does she was in a coma for 20 years. How did she gain all that weight and all that kind of, like, it wouldn't have made much sense. So let's say it's like casting her in it, like, it was probably like a dream of hers to do that, but it just ended up going, like, I felt bad for her in a way. But the movie's just, it's not a good movie. It's got its little moments, its little cutesy moments here and there. But the other problem too is that, like, her character's just unlikable. She's supposed to be the character you root for and you want her to succeed, but she's honestly kind of a horrible person. She's a mean girl who doesn't understand that she's a mean girl until the third act, when everyone kind of calls her out on it, and then she's like, oh, okay, let me change. It's like, no, like, in the last 10 movies, you can't redeem yourself 100%. It's a mess. It's a mess of a film. I know a lot of people like it because anything Rebel Wilson does, they're all for, and it's not like one of the best films of the year. Not in anyone's mind. But I think a lot of people are more like that was fun. It's like, no, it wasn't fun.
Yeah, I didn't see that one because Rebel Wilson, physicality aside, I don't think that her whole shtick, her comedy style, I don't find her funny.
There are
maybe occasionally a line here or two, like in supporting role, like Pitch Perfect, but her as like a lead actress is just a no-go for me.
It doesn't work. My number 3, because I know your 3 are ones that I haven't seen, and you haven't seen this either, because I think you were like, why the fuck did you watch this? You knew what this was going to be. This is a movie that I think I wanted to see it just because of the 2 leads, even though I knew the movie was going to be bad. And that is Disney Plus's Cheaper by the Dozen. This is another one. For what it's doing, it's trying its best, but it's not good. Like, I like Zach Braff. I finally watched Scrubs for the first time this year, and I finally get why everyone loves Scrubs. I think it's a little overrated at points, but I understand it now. And then Gabrielle Union, you and I both love Gabrielle Union. So watching them two as the leads for Cheaper by the Dozen, I'm like, all right, I'll watch it because I want to see what they do with it. This is not Cheaper by the Dozen. Like, Cheaper by the Dozen was Cheaper by the Dozen because they had all, like, 11 or 12 kids or whatever. This is like, nope, here's a family of, like, 3 or 4. She's got 3 or 4 kids. Then also, here's this nephew who's staying with them because his mother, like, left him. And then, here's his sister's kid who she died in a car accident, so we took him in as well. And it's like, that's not Cheaper by the Dozen. That is just a house of 12, which is basically, I said, they're not all their kids kind of thing. And so it's one of those things like, you're even misleading the fucking title of the story.
12 wasn't as good of a title, though.
Well, I know, but it was just like, that's like, this isn't even like the movie that you would get. And then once again, it tries too hard to be like today kind of thing. Like, he named his dogs, I think it was like Bark Obama and Joe Biden, like the dogs, and that was supposed to be the joke. I was like, oh my god. And then, like, you have to throw a racial thing in there at one point, or stuff like that. It was just like, you guys are trying too hard to try to be relevant with today's standards and today's issues, and you're leaving out the one part that needs to be, which is be funny and have a funny comedy, like a family comedy, be funny about it. And to the point where it's like, at the end of the movie, they have this big embracing moment, and it's not earned at all. And the kids cast, they're not memorable. They're not enjoyable at all in the film. They're just kind of there to be basically salad dressing for Zach Braff and Gabrielle Union. And just kind of almost like Christopher Robin, which I had a big problem with, was like Haley Atwell was like so like angry and mean to Ewan McGregor's character. It was like, dude's trying the best he can. And this movie, like, Zach Braff, he's trying to do the best he can, and like he's like prospering in his career, and like everyone just like turns their fucking back on him because he missed like a couple days of like stuff, and it's like come on, like, get off the guy's back. Like, he's really not, it's not like he's being an asshole or anything. Like, the dude's trying to push his career for the family, and like everyone turns on him, and it's just like, that wasn't earned in the movie either. It was just kind of forced. Everything about the movie was forced. It was you call it forced 100% the movie, and that's basically what this film was. And like I said, I didn't hate anyone necessarily in the movie, at least of the family, like the neighbors, like they're so bad, like turn up to a 10 of trying to be like racially insensitive and stuff like that, so that way they could like tackle these issues that aren't needed because it's a fucking Disney Plus kids movie. But it's a mess of a film. Go ahead with your 4 and 3, or no, you already did your 4, right?
Yeah. My number 3 was the movie Duel, starring Karen Gillan,
which was on my most anticipated. I wanted to see it so badly, and you're like, don't. Like, it's not good.
I mean, maybe you'll love it. Who knows? The thing is, Duel had a great concept to it. Duel had this concept where, if you haven't heard of it, basically it's in this like near future where basically they've perfected the art of cloning. And so for people who are like, terminally ill, who are dying or whatever, you can have this clone created of you, and it'll copy all of your memories and everything about you, and it will basically take your place when you die, so that your family and whoever doesn't have to deal with this loss. You can go on basically in a new body. But she does this, and there's usually like a transition period where it like stays with you and learns from you before you pass away, so that it can be more like you. But it turns out, after she has this clone, it turns out she's been misdiagnosed. She's not dying, but the law is that clone and a person can't both exist. And if the clone doesn't want to be decommissioned, which is what they're supposed to do, the clone can basically ask for essentially a trial by combat. Basically, the two of them will duel it out and fight it out, and whoever lives gets to be the new Karen Gillan or whoever. And it's a little bit of a ludicrous thing, but it's like, it could make for an interesting movie.
Honestly, it sounds like how the inevitable sequel of The Island would have been.
Right. So it had potential. And honestly, if this had been made as a mainstream movie like The Island, I think this is a great concept that could have made a great movie. But it's done as like this artsy little independent movie. And so I think that really hurts it, both just in its tone and it's the way it's filmed and things like that. It's long, it's slow, it's dreary as hell. And the worst thing about it, honestly, is Karen Gillan. And not that she's a bad actress, but whether it was her choice or a directorial choice or what, but all of her monologue in both roles is just spoken in this is emotionless monotone. Like no matter what she's talking about, it's just always just talking very just monotone. I can't really do justice to try and describe it, but it's not only makes no sense. There's no reason for it to be like that, but it's just irritating. It's like every time she spoke, I'm just like, oh god, this is annoying the way she's talking. And so I know you haven't seen it, but it was really disappointing for me. It ended up as one of my worst of the years I've seen.
Which made me not check it out. So I was just like, damn, because it was on my most anticipated. I was excited for the movie, and then you were just like, dude, no, it's not. It's really not good. I was like, all right, I won't waste my time. What was your number 2?
My number 2 is a movie I believe it was Amazon Prime movie called All the Old Knives. This is a movie. It's supposed to be like an old school like spy thriller kind of thing. It starred Chris Pine and Thandaway Newton, Jonathan Pryce, Lawrence Fishburne was in it. But it was supposed to be. It's more of a drama. It's not like a spy action movie. It's definitely it's a slow burn kind of drama to it. And it was I think it was made for Amazon Prime. It was never going to be a theatrical release. But based on the cast, I thought it'd be worth checking out, and it was just dreadfully boring. And honestly, I don't even have a lot more to say about it because I don't even remember the plot of this movie. I saw it somewhere early in the year, and despite the people involved with it, it was just completely boring. And it is my second worst movie I've seen this year.
All right, my number 2 is a movie that you don't even have in your top 10, and that kind of upsets me. And it also upsets me is that I quote said it's better than the Batman, which is so not fucking true at all. And that's Morbius. Morbius is a dog shit film. It is such a dog shit film, but it's a movie that I expected to be dog shit when I saw the trailers for it 18,000 times before the movie actually got released. Jared Leto sucks in the movie. He's horrible in the film. The only person that knows what movie they're in is Matt Smith, and even then, it's not a good role for Matt Smith. And I actually feel sorry for Matt Smith because he's such a great actor. He's so good, but he just gets put in the worst fucking movies. Now, who knows? He's in the Game of Thrones spinoff, so maybe that will like get him back up there. But this movie is a mess. It is cut up to shit. There's probably a good movie somewhere on the cutting room floor that actually makes this movie make sense. It's not in this film. Morbius's power set is ridiculously stupid. It has, hands down, and you agree with this, the worst post-credit scenes in comic book movie history. That drives you and me so angrily insane of how stupid this is. It's bad. It's bad. And then they re-released it. Thinking because everyone made memes of it, like
I didn't even know what the meme thing. I'm somehow out of touch, so I wasn't aware of the meme thing. Everybody starts yelling, "It's Morbid time," and I don't even understand. I don't.
And so they go, guys, let's release it. We'll make money. No, it's a joke, dumbasses. Like, did you not get the joke? Yeah. This movie is a horrible fucking film. I did not enjoy a single frame of this film, except for maybe Matt Smith dancing because Matt Smith like said, "I know what fucking movie I'm in. I'm just gonna cheese the shit out of this." The special effects are bad. It's the fights are nonsensical. There's characters that are brought up who are basically just abandoned, and you're like, whatever happened to that character? There's a subplot with these 2 cops that's supposed to have had way more story in the film, and they're not given any story at all. They just kind of walk on the scene, say 3 lines, and then leave.
Which is kind of fine because I didn't like either one of them.
But like Tyrese has a robot arm, and they never explain why he has a robot arm in the movie. I fucking hated this film. Brian was okay with the movie, but it is. I
didn't hate this movie. It almost ended up as a honorable mention for surprises, just because I had heard how horrible it was. I'm like, oh, I didn't hate that movie. I actually liked the special effects and the way the fights were done. I think the style.
I'm talking about the faces. The faces. Oh god, they're so
like in the fighting, the way kind of like the color was like bleeding. I kind of like the way that looked. It had a unique look to it. Jared Leto is just kind of being Jared Leto. I agree. I think Matt Smith, who I actually don't like in a lot of stuff, I think he's a very bland person. But I think he was totally seasoned up because he knew.
You never watched Doctor Who. That's why you don't appreciate Matt Smith.
Yeah. But in the end credits was just Sony desperation. No, we're part of the universe too. You gotta pay attention to us. But that was
Acknowledge me.
As soon as the movie ends, just leave. Don't wait for any.
Don't watch the end credit scenes. I hate to say that because it's Michael Keaton. Don't fucking.
But yeah, I didn't hate this movie. So it's what it is.
What was your number one?
My number one worst movie of the year is a movie that you might have even heard of. It's one of those straight to VOD kind of movies where you put a star on the cover who's barely in the movie. It's a movie called Panama. It stars Mel Gibson along with Cole Hauser. But
I have heard of this movie, and I thought about seeing it because of Yellowstone, because of Cole Hauser, and I ended up not seeing it.
Mel Gibson is, at least he's in more than one scene. He's in probably 3 scenes, but for a total screen time of 10 minutes. So, but of course, they put his face in the cover. He's the biggest star they got in it. Yeah. But I watched the trailer for it because I'm like, it looks like a throwback to the old school style of like 80s, early 90s action films, and that it was totally trying to play that part up. Cole Hauser looked good in it, and I liked him in a lot of stuff he's been in, and Mel Gibson. And this movie is just, it's nothing about this movie works. It's boring. The action scenes aren't done well. Mel Gibson he's fine, but the script and the dialogue he's given is just really pathetic. Cole Hauser's in it. He's supposed to be having this like relationship with this woman in it who also I think tries to kill him at one point, but she still loves him. He still loves her. But it's just that there's no chemistry there, and the acting is bad. And again, I won't go too into the movie because you haven't seen it. Nobody else has seen this movie, but it's the worst movie I saw this year. And it's especially disappointing because it's from one of the directors of Crank and Crank 2, as well as Gamer, which none of those are horrible films. I actually enjoy the Crank movies quite a bit, but yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, my number one, and I'm going to blitz through this real quick because I went on nauseum about how much I hate this movie. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's fucking awful. This movie is horrible, and this movie very well could still be at my number one spot by the end of the year. Unlikable characters to the max, just horribly written, horribly acted. They throw in the "you're gonna get canceled, bro" scene, which I get. Brian's like, well, that's the best part of the movie because that's where the most delayed death scenes are in, but it's so cringe worthy bad that I had a hard time making it through the first 10 minutes. And somehow powered it through all the way to the end. And then it tries to tack on a Texas Chainsaw-esque type of ending that's just so laughably like awful that you just sort of like, why the fuck not? Just go ahead.
This movie wanted to be Halloween, the new Halloween.
So badly wanted to be Halloween, and then it also tried to add this extra element to the lead character who was like, I've seen her. I mean, she like it's the girl from 8th grade. She was great in 8th grade. She's atrocious in this movie, and they add this character development of her character in the film, and you think that like that's going to like mean something, and it's just tacked on for her. Like she's not willing to quit, and it's like, no, that is not the thing you use for that scene to happen. And I'm not even going to say what it is on here on screen, but it's so bad. Everything they try to do, and then they try to like say Halloween it up by bringing in the original final girl from the first film, and she's so inconsequential to the plot.
Inconsequential, she's incompetent. It has no reason for her to be in this except to be like, hey, look, we got somebody from our original movie too.
Yeah, and she's in it for maybe 10 minutes, and there's no fucking point to her. She just shows up and
dies,
done, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's oh god, this movie's fucking horrendously bad. Yet not in your top 10.
It's in my bottom 15. It's not in my bottom 10 just because there's other things that just because for me. A movie can be actively bad is almost better than a movie that's just dreadfully boring, if that makes sense to you.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre deserves better than what this film gave. And I knew going into Netflix, I was worried. And oh my God, I think I wasn't even prepared for how shitty this fucking film was. That was my number one worst film of the year. All right, so now we're going to go into our top 10, or I guess top 11 for our honorable mention. Best movies of the year so far. Like I said, our surprises. You know, 4 out of my 6 most surprising are in my top 10. Brian's top 5 are all in his his best rankings. So we're gonna kind of going back and forth on that a little bit. Now for me, my honorable mention in terms of my rankings, in terms of like my scores I give, my honorable mention is actually probably like my number 7 movie of the year, but I don't consider this movie like a movie. I know you're going to fight back on that, but my honorable mention is Jackass Forever. I loved it. And this was honestly, if it wasn't because I loved all the Jackass movies, I probably would put it in my most surprising. But it's like, it's Jackass. I knew what I was walking into. I knew I was going to enjoy it. But because it's like, it's a skits. It's just a bunch of skits and stuff, and it's not an actual movie. I can't put it in my best films of the year. So it's gonna probably be my honorable mention, probably at the end of the year as well, unless there's just so many other things where it's like I gotta talk about these movies. So that's my honorable mention, even though it's probably number 7 on the year for me. It's mine. What's your honorable mention?
My honorable mention is actually is my number 5 surprise, and that was, you've already talked about Uncharted.
Okay.
Because Uncharted is a movie that I don't have feelings either way about the video games. Before the movie came out, I played I think 2 of them, and they're fine, but just like you talked about, not really my kind of game. Whatever. But what got me is that what I had known of the games and what I'd seen in the games and people talking about the cast and things like this. How even the creators of the game said they kind of trying to make their character kind of model after Nathan Fillion, who obviously at this point was kind of too old to start a new franchise that they're going to try and launch with this.
Hey, I mean, we got to see a fan-made film. And
we did.
He was great.
And it was fun. But I know in the latest game, I guess they'd gone with a younger, like a prequel version or whatever of Nathan.
In the third game, they do a mission in the third game where he meets Sully for the first time, and then in the fourth game, they're like pretty much that whole beginning of the movie with him and his older brother. Like that's missions in the fourth game because the brother isn't even mentioned until the fourth game. So there is a younger-esque part of it, but
yeah, so they decided to go that route with the
guys.
movie and cast Tom Holland, who I like Tom Holland in Spider-Man,
yeah,
and the other movies I've seen him in. So I had no problem with the casting, but it was like it just seemed to me like it was just like oh, we gotta cast a young guy and create a new a franchise we can make movies of, and so I went in expecting it to be okay, but I wasn't gonna love it, and I didn't love it. It's not like been top 10 films, and it might not even be top 20 by the end of the year, but I really didn't dislike it. I mean, I thought it had some fun scenes, and it has plot holes galore the entire movie. It's got the worst product placement I've seen of the year. It's got all kinds of problems. Sony once again decides to show their post-credit scenes in the trailers for the movie, things like that. But I mean, it actually was an entertaining film, and for what I kind of was expecting going in, it surprised me.
Yeah, because like I said, that was my whole thing. I was like, is it a great movie? No, it's passable. It's a very passable film, but it surprised me because I was expecting a fucking train wreck.
Yeah, and I got to see Antonio Banderas back in a big budget movie, which he's gotten kind of fallen into that straight to video kind of stuff. So I'm glad, even though it's just a small role, to see him in a movie again. Although we won't talk about the one scene.
Yeah.
I also really appreciated that there were several scenes in this movie where you could tell they were actually filmed on locations in jungles and things like this, as opposed to like that Red Notice look where the entire movie is filmed in front of a green screen, no matter what location they're in. It's just, it's nice because it has that real feel to it,
The authenticness of it.
Yeah.
All right. My number 10 was on Brian's worst list, and that is The Black Phone. And Brian knows this from our most anticipated list film earlier in the year. I have been excited for this movie for a while. Since I saw the first trailer for this film last year, I have been all in on this movie. I was bummed / excited when it got pushed from February to June. So I was like, well, that means it's got to be good, because they wouldn't push it into June if it sucked. They would have left it where it was at. Like I said, I really liked the performances of the 2 young leads in the movie. 2 kids I thought did great in the film. Unlike Brian, I really, really liked Ethan Hawke's performance in this. I liked kind of the kookiness of the character. I liked the story. I liked the 1970s, 80s horror aesthetic feel to it. Like it felt like a very Stephen King-esque kind of film with it. I loved, even though it's kind of very much one location for most of the film, I liked the setting. I liked the layout of the room. I liked where the plot of the story went through everything for the most part. The kids' actors were not that good. Not the 2 leads, but the rest of the kid actors in the movie were really, really bad. But what I said in my review is, and I told Brian this, I really enjoyed the film, but it felt like it was missing something to push it from a good movie to a great movie. I don't know if it would have just been more scenes with Ethan Hawke because he wasn't in it as much as I wanted him to, or something maybe more explanation to the supernatural elements of the film, especially around the sister and the mom kind of thing. It just there was something missing in this film to really push it over the hump to get to that extra level for me, and that's why it's right there at that number 10 kind of ranking for me. Is like, it's good, but it's just missing something for it to be great, which obviously Brian felt the exact opposite about that film, hence why it's on his worst. But Brian, what was your number 10 film of the year so far?
My number 10 film of the year at this point is my number 4 surprise of the year, and that's Elvis. Elvis from Baz Luhrmann. So, I mean, people know that I like Baz Luhrmann in for the most part. But Baz Luhrmann, his only problem with this movie, one of the few problems that I thought it had, was that Baz Luhrmann, when he goes full Baz Luhrmann, you know, in his crazy style and stuff, like in Moulin Rouge and Romeo and Juliet, I think it really works. But this movie, like, has just like there's like a couple anachronistic songs thrown in. It's like, I think maybe 3 songs stuff thrown in, and a couple points where he does some weird direction type things. But then the rest of the movie is fairly straightforward. So it's like those kind of moments and songs just kind of stand out. And like you, I had some problem with these, like going, you know, when the women are like going crazy orgasmic just because he's wiggling his hips and stuff, which they went way over the top on that scene. So I mean, the film definitely has its problems, but I actually ended up enjoying it more than I thought I would, mostly because I'm not a big Elvis fan. I have nothing against Elvis. I've just never cared about Elvis one way or the other. But Austin Butler did a great job as Elvis. I think that Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker from the trailers, I thought was just going to be so ridiculously bad and stupid. Here, I think I said in my review, he teeters on the edge of caricature, but he never quite goes over the edge. Like, you can still believe him as a character, even if he is kind of playing a little hammy. But I mean, the movie I thought was interesting. It made me, you know, interested in a character, in a person that I didn't really care about, which is the mark of a good biopic. I do think that they put a lot of focus on the wrong parts of the movie because they like seem to fast forward through like a lot of stuff that would have been really cool to spend more time on, and then they spent like an entire hour on like his Vegas residency, which was a little odd choice to me. But it is a movie that I enjoyed. I mean, and not necessarily because of the music, because like I said, I don't care, but I think the performances carried it through.
Yeah, this was one of those movies. I remember when you were talking about this earlier in the year. Like, I can't wait to see what Elvis is going to do because Baz Luhrmann's doing it, because Moulin Rouge and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I'll see it, but I have no interest in this. And I remember they released the first trailer, and I was like, Brian, you finally got to see it. Are you excited? You're like, this actually made me less excited for it, which is a normal trend for me and Brian. Is a trailer comes out, and I'm like, Brian, this movie you're really excited about. Oh, actually, I'm less excited after that trailer. Oh my god. But I went into it. It didn't crack my top 10 because those issues that I had with it. It's right outside of it. It's like number 11 or 12 on the year for me. It's just right behind Black Phone for me. And that's just because, yes, the Baz Luhrmann-ness of the film, like the first 5-10 minutes of the movie is a mess. That whole Tom Parker, like old man walking through the casino, like over monologuing shit. I was like, what are we doing here? Like, I get Baz Luhrmann's like crazy, but when, like you said, 80%, 85% of the movie is pretty straightforward, and then he throws this stuff in, it's like
it just feels more out of place. It's like
you're taking me out of the experience. You made me go, what's going on here? But and I even said this in my review, Austin Butler's performance added at least 10 to 15% more to my score. And I agree. There are certain elements that they should have focused more on or spent more time on, and other parts they spent way too much on, to the point where I was like, are we going to move past this? Are we going to – nope, we're going to stay on this? Okay, this is the rest of the movie? Okay, fine. But Austin Butler's performance is fantastic. It's my favorite performance of the year so far. And I think he deserves at least Oscar nom. You know, we don't know what's happening for the rest of the year, but I think he should still get acknowledged by year's end. But yeah, it probably is my number 12. So just missed it. But this was one of those that I actually wouldn't hate going back and seeing it again. I don't know if I want to go sit in the theater for another 2 hours and 40 minutes, but definitely when it comes out on like digital, Blu-ray, all that kind of stuff, it's definitely a movie that I would get and rewatch parts of if not most of it. Because yes, the Tom Hanks character is kind of like, oh my God, shut up and stop talking kind of thing. My number 9 is actually my number 3 most surprising. And it's weird because it technically shouldn't be in my most surprising because I was so excited for this movie to come out. And I remember telling you personally, I can't wait to see this movie. You're like, this movie's going to suck. I was like, no, I'm actually really, really excited for this movie. And then you ended up liking it, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be on your list. And that is Chippendale Rescue Rangers. I am obviously in the age group that I watched Chippendale when it was on TV on Disney. I loved the characters. I loved everything about it. So when I saw that they were going to make a movie with John Mulaney and Andy Samberg as Chippendale, I was like, I'm all for this. Not knowing at all what the movie was really going to be about. And then we get the movie, and it's this really meta, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit-esque kind of film. And it just doubled down on things. Like, it made fun of itself. It didn't take itself seriously, but when it did, it worked. I love the characters in this movie. And I loved all the hidden Easter egg jokes that, like, if you know, that it's fucking hilarious. If you don't know, like the Uncanny Valley, I love Uncanny Valley. That joke hits so goddamn hard for me with the cats and all that kind of stuff, which, except if you're not like the average moviegoer, are they going to get that joke? No. So I felt like this movie really was kind of for the people like me and Brian. It was like, for the people who actually know this stuff, here's these jokes specifically for you. And I appreciated the hell out of that. It does kind of lose its way near the end of the film, but I really enjoyed this film overall. And it's my number 3 surprising and number 9 of the year. And I think, Brian, is this on your list? I'm pretty sure it's got to be.
It is on my list. Actually, this is a movie that moved all over. You want me to talk about it now, or when it slots in there?
I mean, we're already. I mean, unless
We'll
you
talk
want.
about it now.
I mean, we're on this list, so we don't need to.
It's fine. We don't care about it. Yeah. So this movie it was from my number 4 to my number 10, and everywhere in between. I wasn't sure where to put this one. The problem is I've only watched it once. I think I need to rewatch it again. I'll probably rewatch it again before the end of the year to make sure I kind of solidify my feelings on it. But I currently ended up at number 6 at the moment for me. The films I've seen so far this year. And like you said,
surprising?
It was my number 2 surprising.
I was going to say, I was like, how could it not be on your surprise?
It was my number 2 surprise. Because again, I had no expectations for this. I loved Rescue Rangers when I was a kid, but it's one of those that, like, I went back and like rewatched an episode or two, like when Disney Plus started, and I was like, they're fine, but I don't enjoy it the way I did when I was a kid. It's not the kind of thing I watched like, oh, this is just as great as it was when I watched it originally. It's kind of like
most of that stuff isn't.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like when they heard they're making a movie of it, I'm like, ugh, I don't know. But what I didn't realize, I didn't even know at the time, was that it was going to be this live action animation hybrid. And not only that, is even the animation, like, one of them's 2D animation, the other one's got the upgrade to 3D animations.
I love they treated that like it was plastic surgery for them.
Yeah.
I love that element to it.
So, I mean, basically, if this had just been a Chippendale Rescue Rangers movie, I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much. It would have been fine. It would have been enjoyable enough, but it would not crack my top 10. If this had been Chippendale Rescue Rangers live action animated movie, just like like a normal movie, it would have been fine, but I don't think I would have loved it. But the fact that they did what they did and turned it into this meta comedy, it really feels, you can really tell that the Lonely Island guy it kind of has that feel to it. I really think that Andy Samberg being a part of it, and probably he had his fellow people working on writing and stuff like that, because
one of his guys directed it, right?
One of them directed. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, you can totally tell. It just feels like that Lonely Island feel to it, where it's like a lot of jokes for people like you and me. It also kind of has that Lord Miller kind of feel to it as well.
Yeah, and
it's just like you said, it's the actual characters of Chippendale and the main plot of the movie. Even I was kind of like, okay, whatever. I don't really actually care about the plot. I don't even remember the plot, to be honest with you at this point.
I mean, I do.
But it was all the individual jokes and the moments and the cameos and things, which could have been annoying if not done right. But they did them so well. They played them with that wing. They knew what the audience wanted to see, and they never overdid anything. It just turned out to be a ton of fun.
Yeah. That was my 9. What was your 9?
My number 9 is a film directed by Joseph Kosinski and starring Miles Teller, but it's Spiderhead.
Wait,
Spiderhead, which I know Sean was not as big a fan of.
I was like, Spiderhead cracked your top 10?
It did. It's not going to the end of the year. It's number 9. Now, this is a movie that I didn't know what to expect going in, because we love the cast, we like the director, but we knew nothing of the story originally except like a log line. And even when we saw the movie, it's like the movie itself is I enjoyed it, but it's not everything I'd hoped it would be, but not enough to make like my disappointments list or anything like that. But what gets me though, the reason I still rate it fairly highly is just because I really did like the performances of all the actors in it. I think it's a very stylish movie. I think it looks really cool. The soundtrack is awesome, 80s soundtrack that just all the songs work. It's got just kind of a very cool style and feel to it that made it an enjoyable watch. Now again, was it everything I wanted it to be? No. Will it be my top 10? The end of the year? Absolutely not. But I thought it was fun.
Yeah, this movie, had we not seen that initial trailer going, what the fuck is this? This probably would have been my most disappointed of the year. It was fine. It's just, like I said, the performances were solid. My whole thing was I just felt like, almost like Black Phone, it needed a little more. Maybe it was a little more story with maybe like the rest of the, the character for Hemsworth, or
I would agree with that. And the directions it went, I didn't really like where it kind of went at the end.
Yeah, it's like there's a good idea in there. I just didn't think it got executed to, I think, where the fullest.
Yeah, no, it was the basic concept and the style of it, or what I give it credit for what it did.
Yeah, like I said, it was at the end of the day, for a Netflix movie, it was fine, but not. Yeah, we both had another movie so much more in our head that it was going to be so much better, and I just didn't reach it. My number 8 is a movie that clearly, this movie, honestly, in my head right now, I probably would swap this with Chippendale, but because I locked this thing in, this is my number 8. A lot of people are kind of shitting on this movie right now, and I actually thought it was pretty fine. I really enjoyed it, and that was Lightyear. A lot of people were crapping on this movie because it's not making the box office money, which you and I both said on a normal animated film, it's doing pretty well box office wise, but because it's Pixar and Toy Story related and all this kind of stuff, it's considered a failure. But I went in this movie with relatively low expectations, and maybe that's why I like it, because I went in with the lowest of low expectations for it. But I think it set out to do what it wanted to do. It wanted to create Buzz as a character that's not Toy Story centric, but just a normal character going, hey, we had this character that we actually could probably do some actual real like stories with and actual adventures with outside of the Toy Story element, which Woody you really can't do, but Buzz you can. Let's give someone like Chris Evans a chance to do this instead of Tim Allen, and let's just build a franchise potentially with this character. And I think it set out to do that, and I think that it did a solid job doing it. It has its Pixar elements to it, but it also has that summer popcorn feel, especially the final battles at the end of the movie. I liked it. I liked the voice cast in it. I wasn't necessarily crazy with the Zurg reveal at the end because of it does kind of contradict what we know about in Toy Story, but it looked gorgeous. It looked fantastic. I enjoyed the humor. Yes, the middle does drag a little bit. They probably could have cut about a good 15-20 minutes of the movie in there, but I still enjoyed the film. Is it going to be in my top 10 at the end of the year? Probably not. Will Chippendale leapfrog it on a rewatch? Probably. But like I said, I think it set out to what it set out to try to do. I think it accomplished that. You've actually gone back and actually seen this since we last spoke. I have. So I know this definitely didn't crack your top 10, but
no, this is about number 26, I think right now. I looked at my list. It's fine. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I just thought it was just kind of okay. I think that there are as many cons as there were pros for me. I'm not this person who's like this loyalist, like, oh, it's not really Toy Story, like some people are complaining. I understood the concept they were going for. I just thought the parts were kind of boring. I thought they were hitting you a little over the head too hard with some of the message moments and lines of dialogue. There's the reveal at the end with Zurg, which is a little confusing, but it was fine. It's just I didn't love it. So.
Yeah, it like I said, even in terms of my Pixar rankings, it's like in the middle. So I mean, like I said, I enjoyed it for what it was. What was your number 8?
My number 8 is another, I suppose, kind of a meta movie. That's The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. This is, of course, the film of Nicolas Cage playing himself or a version of himself.
Yeah.
This is another one where I first heard the concept of it, And first of all, this is of course during the period where Nicolas Cage is doing all this straight to VOD junk movies. So even the fact that he was playing this version of himself, you're like, this could still just be some low budget crappy movie. And then I saw the trailer for it, and like, you know what, this might actually be decent. It's got some potential. I'm gonna wait till I see it. It's got Tiffany Haddish in it, so there's that. But I still have hopes for it. And then I saw the movie, and it's actually a ton of fun. Again, this isn't going to be my top 10 at the end of the year. This is just, but based on the movies I have seen this year, it was just one of the ones that was the most original. It was the most fun. I always enjoy when actors are playing like a version of themselves, like Neil Patrick Harris in Harold and Kumar, things like that. And so seeing Nicolas Cage get to kind of poke fun at himself and his career, I really enjoyed that. And and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was incredibly excited for this movie. Brian knows that when it came out, and it was fine. Like, I enjoyed it. Like I said, the FBI Tiffany Haddish element, I think, is what really kind of knocked this movie down a peg for me. They didn't overtake the movie by any means, but it was just like, had it just been this story of these two guys hanging out and like buddying and just, running into stuff and doing stuff like this, it would have gotten a lot higher for me. But when they added this excess element of the FBI and the cartel and all this other stuff, and then like the third act is exactly what they were complaining about a third act being in the film, and then they actually go and do that third act.
The point.
I know it's the point, but it was just like, I was like, okay, I mean, like, it is what it is, but it's like, it's that the one thing they hate about the third act, they go ahead and go and do that third act, and it's like, you're right, I didn't want that for this movie. I wanted you guys to go and do something different. Like I said, I enjoyed it. It just didn't crack my top 10 because of that. And like I said, Tiffany Haddish wasn't bad. It was honestly more.
She was tolerable. She was not.
It was more of what's his name? God.
Ike Barinholtz?
Yeah, Ike Barinholtz's character was just atrocious in this film. But yeah, like I said, I like the movie. It's definitely a movie I'd go back and rewatch because I really loved Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal together. Like they were awesome. Anytime they're on screen together, it was fantastic. And Nicolas Cage to Nicolas Cage, that was an element that I wasn't prepared for, and I needed more of it. I needed more of what we got in that movie. My number 7, and this honestly could go up, but I've watched it twice now, and I have loved it both times I've seen it. And this was a movie, once again, we didn't, at the beginning of the year, this was not on our anticipated. This is a movie that we both enjoyed. We weren't prepared to like it as much, and that is The Adam Project. I mean, it's Ryan Reynolds. I love Ryan Reynolds. He's one of my favorites out there. But his movies, I enjoy quite a bit, but they're never best year or anything like that. Like, Deadpool is great, but Deadpool is not as good as everyone makes it out to be. Deadpool is a very, very solid comic book franchise, and I enjoy the hell out of Ryan Reynolds in it. This movie, I loved the story that they did with it. Now, it's not a story that we haven't seen before, but I love the way Ryan plays it with this younger version of himself. And I'm blanking on the kid's name who played younger Ryan.
Walker Scobell.
Yes.
Walker Scobell.
He's going to be Percy Jackson in the Percy Jackson series coming out. He did a perfect spot on Ryan Reynolds in this movie. Like, there are so many points in this movie where he's doing stuff. I go, that's totally what Ryan Reynolds would have done if he was a kid. Yeah. The dramatic elements between Ryan Reynolds and Jennifer Gardner as his mom and Ruffalo as his dad, I think those elements hit way harder than they needed to. I think they were incredibly well done. Got me emotional a couple points in this film. The action, when we got action in the movie, I think it was also done in a fun way. The humor is great. I loved this movie. The only thing that maybe could have done a little bit better was that the villain could have been a little stronger and have a little more of a better element to it. But for what we got, this was a Netflix film that I don't think anyone was prepared to love as much as they did. And like it's at number 7 for me. I wish it was in my top 5, but it's right there. But this is definitely a movie that I'm going to make sure we talk about at the end of the year. Is this on your top 10?
This is my number 3 so far of the year.
Wow, number 3. Okay.
Now, again, this is one that's been all over the place, and I haven't rewatched it since the first time I watched it, but I really enjoyed it that first time I watched it. I think this speaks more to that there has not been a lot of great movies that have come out so far this year that it's that high. Because I think it could still be in my top 10 at the end of the year, but it would definitely, I don't think it'll be this high. But you've already covered most of the same things I would say. I mean, obviously Ryan Reynolds is a ton of fun, and that kid does it great. He plays a young Ryan Reynolds great. This is a movie that, especially after Red Notice, I had no expectations for it being like a great quality movie as far as a Netflix movie. And they were talking about like, oh, it's this big budget Netflix, action film, sci-fi film. I'm like, yeah, I saw the last one you made. It didn't look great. But this one, I will say, actually looked and felt like a real movie. That's the first plus. That's another reason I'm looking really forward to The Gray Man, because it looks like Netflix can make real movies and not just feel like Netflix movies. Like Spiderhead definitely feels like a Netflix movie kind of thing, like you're talking about. But it's got great comedy to it. It's got great action. Like talking about the emotional moments. There's the scene in the bar with Ryan Reynolds and Jennifer Garner. I love that scene.
Such a great scene.
But yeah, I mean, you've already pretty much covered all the same things I would have said. It was a film that I had honestly no expectations for, and I ended up really enjoying.
Honestly, one scene I forgot to mention, since you pretty much covered what you want to cover, that I was like, this moment is hitting way harder than it should. Like I said, the moments when they hit. It's that moment when Zoe Saldana shows up. She comes in, saves the day, and you know that she's the wife of Ryan Reynolds, but in his eyes, she died. And there's that moment when they have to run and they have to leave her. And it's the moment when Ryan and Walker are driving away, and he's driving away, and he's just like, damn it! Like, just knowing that he was like, he fucking had her, and he's gonna lose her again, and just know, like, that frustration he lets out at that moment. Like, I felt that.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people are just like, it's Ryan Reynolds just going off. No, like, pay attention to the character. That is a fantastic, like, moment for Ryan to lose it at that point because of what had happened. Like, it's little moments like that where I'm just like, dude, that was the perfect moment to do that, and it hit me so hard, just like the bar scene did, where it's like you could have played that moment so many ways, and they played it beautifully. It was Sean Levy, right? Yeah, Sean Levy directed it, which Free Guy was one of my favorite movies last year.
And I was gonna do Deadpool 3.
Yeah, Deadpool 3. I can't wait to see what he does with Deadpool 3. That was my 7, and that was your 3.
That was my 3.
What's your 7?
My number 7 is The Northman. This is a film that honestly could have rated higher for me, but not for certain reasons. Because The Northman, for me, I've always liked Viking movies and Viking epics, and I want to see this, this brutality of war and these kind of things. And so there are so many things about this movie that I really enjoyed. I loved the battle scenes. I thought Alexander Skarsgård did a great job. There's some weird twists and stuff in the movie that I won't cover, but I really enjoyed so much of the movie. But I think what knocks it down a little bit for me is its, as I call it, its indiness. It feels like the A24 version of an action war epic. And I think that's something a lot of people love about it. And I think that's the thing that hurts it for me, because I would love to see just a traditional, big budget studio version of this, in the vein of things like, Braveheart and Gladiator and these movies like this, but, with this Viking, community. And I think that I would really enjoy that. And I did love the story, the acting, the action. I thought was pretty good. It was just a lot of these scenes where it got like a little weird and indie, those are the parts that just dragged it down a little bit for me.
I think you mean the Robert Egger moments.
The Robert Eggers of it.
The Robert Egger moments is when this is
actually where the director was a hindrance for me, but
yeah, this was my number 2 most surprising.
Oh, surprising.
And my number 4 movie of the year. Robert Eggers, I really, really like The Lighthouse, but it is a weird movie. It's one of those movies like you watch it like, that was a really good film. I will probably never watch that movie again. So going into this, like, you got Ethan Hawke, you got Willem Dafoe, you got Nicole Kidman, you got Alexander Skarsgård, who I love from True Blood and the small part in Zoolander. But I haven't really liked him in really anything else. Like, I want him to do well. So when I saw this trailer for this movie, I was like, I hope Skarsgård knocks this out of the park, because I want him to do well as an actor. He'd be a fantastic Sabretooth, by the way. But Robert Eggers,
I would still say, for anyone who hasn't seen it, The Legend of Tarzan is actually a good movie.
Which I've never seen. So I can't really argue that point. But Robert Eggers, he has kind of like Baz Luhrmann with Elvis. He has a weird, eccentric style, which you're either on board with or you're not. I was on board with it for The Lighthouse. I wasn't sure if I was going to be on board with it for this movie. The first 10 to 20 minutes of this movie is probably the most Robert Eggers of it all. And that's the part of the movie that I wasn't really into. And I remember watching it and like, I can't remember if I saw this with my dad or not. I really can't remember. And I remember, I want to say I did because I told him, I was like, there's some weird shit that's probably going to be happening in this movie. That's the way the director is. You're just going to have to roll with it. And you do get those weird moments, and it was like I said, it's mostly in that first act. But then when it goes to full on, like once Skarsgård gets on screen, and it's adult version of that character, the movie to me runs away with it and really does a lot of things. I love the berserker mode that he goes through in this film. I actually love Nicole Kidman at certain points in this movie, especially when a certain element of the film happens. The big battle finale at the end. I think you and I both said I wanted a little more out of it, but visually, it looked fantastic. And the ending was just kind of like, okay, I guess that's the end of the movie kind of deal. But I really, really enjoyed this film. It was a movie that I was expecting to go, probably think it was fine for what it was, but, Robert Eggers went a little too Robert Eggers with it, but he actually didn't. And I really, really enjoy this movie, and I will champion this movie to a lot of people who maybe were turned off about wanting to see a film like this because maybe they're not into Vikings or they're not into Robert Eggers, and to say, really check this movie out. This movie is pretty badass. And I agree. I would have loved to have seen a big budget version of this at some point because I think it really would have worked really, really well. Going to my number 6. This is also my honorable mention for most surprising, mainly because I was relatively excited for this film when it was coming out. You were not, and I don't think you've seen this film because you kind of refused to. But I really enjoyed this film, and it's like I said, it's my honorable mention for most surprising, but my number 6 of the year, and that is Netflix's Hustle. Shocking, a Happy Madison movie has made it into my top 10 of the year. You want to know why it is? Because it's not a Happy fucking Madison movie. This is a straight up sports drama film acted by Adam Sandler, and probably my favorite performance of his. He's not trying to go, ooh. He's just like, he's a straightforward character. He's got layers to his character. He's got great dramatic moments with this character. I'm not gonna say his first name because I always say it wrong, but Hernan Gomez, who plays the basketball player in this movie, he's great. He is not a very good NBA basketball player. I think he might actually have just gotten cut from his NBA team. Dude, go into acting because you actually did a great job in this film. I'm a huge NBA fan, and that's probably why I enjoy this a lot more than Brian's not an NBA fan, and Brian doesn't love Adam Sandler. So this doesn't hit Brian's peaks. I'm going to watch this movie. It hits everything that I want, and I enjoyed the hell out of this movie. And it also does something, and don't take this the wrong way. We're not saying she's ugly, but Brian's always had a big problem with Adam Sandler always being with the hot chicks or the hot wives that would never ever be with Adam Sandler. And he's married to Queen Latifah in this movie. I'm not saying Queen Latifah is ugly. She's a very beautiful girl or beautiful woman, but at least it like makes sense with her and Adam Sandler in this movie. And he's not like with Jennifer Aniston or Courtney Cox or someone that's like, no, Adam Sandler would never.
Kate Beckinsale, yeah.
Beckinsale and shit like that. But yeah, Hustle is a great story. I loved the hell out of it, and probably my favorite Adam Sandler performance, bar none. Brian has never seen this movie. He probably
I wouldn't even call it a refusal to see it. I will say early on when I thought it was going to be a typical Adam Sandler movie, I would have been like, hell no, I'm not watching that. But then I found out from you and other people that it's a drama. It's not your typical Adam Sandler movie. And then it's just, I'm not refusing to see it so much as I'm just not interested.
Plus, it's got Ben Foster in it. Ben Foster plays a grade A asshole in this movie, and you love Ben Foster. But I will admit, when this movie started and that dude comes up, the hat, terrific thing, I was like, oh shit, this is an actual Happy Madison movie. And then it sounds like, okay, don't deter from that, because it's the least Happy Madison movie you're ever gonna see, and it was a great film. What was your number 6?
My 6 I already discussed was Chippendale.
Okay, that was Chippendale. So, what was your 5 then?
My 5 is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Okay.
This is a movie that I had high hopes for, and I did enjoy, but although I actually, as they got closer and closer to coming out, I kind of tempered my expectations, and because I'm like, too many people were all about, we're going to see it's cameo fest. Everyone in the world's going to be in this movie. It's going to tie together multiverse. We're going to be able to see the the X-Men from the Fox universe. We're going to see everything. And it's like, just
It was going to be cameos in the
back off,
movie,
people.
basically.
Everybody who's ever played a Marvel character is going to be in
Yeah.
this movie. And I knew that wasn't going to happen. So my reservations on this movie are not because of disappointment of that, because I knew that wasn't happening. My thing is, I enjoyed the movie. I enjoy every MCU movie to different degrees, with the exception of maybe the Eternals. But the rest of the
Eternals was brought up to me today by somebody. I was like, that movie was fucking awful.
I'm actually forgetting that movie even came out.
I'm glad.
I memory. I don't plan to ever watch it again, which is one reason I left trivia, so I don't have to watch things I don't want to watch.
Yeah.
But I like all MCU. So even the weakest MCU movie to me is still better than 90% of other movies I see. So I enjoyed this one. I think Benedict Cumberbatch is great in it. I like a lot of the characters in it. I thought that the whole multiverse aspect I thought was done a little bit too goofy. Especially when they go to there's a world where you have, your paint. I'm like, how the fuck does that work? It's almost as weird to me as like, oh, here's a universe where your fingers are hot dogs. It's just stop coming up with funny things. It's something on a sketch comedy show, not something to put in a movie. So I mean that aspect was done a little weird to me. Wanda's motivations are always a little odd to me because I mean she's so obsessed with kids, but doesn't even mention, I don't think, Vision in the entire movie. She doesn't even care that she doesn't want to get Vision back. She just wants the kids back. She criticizes Doctor Strange, saying you're doing all this for a girl you just met yesterday. It's like, well, you had your kids for a week and you're willing to destroy the universe for them. All these little things like that I have nitpicks in the plot points and things like that. But for the most part, I did enjoy the movie. I expect this to be higher on my list, especially at least for the first half. Absolutely. I thought this would be, 1, 2, 3 tops. And it is still, it's in my top 5 movies of the year so far. So I did enjoy it. It wasn't everything I kind of was hoping it would be.
This is my number 3. So I loved this movie. I've seen it twice now, and I'm sure I'll see it at least one more time now that it's actually on Disney Plus in 4K. Yeah. Unlike Brian, I loved Wanda's motivations this movie. Yes, she probably should have mentioned Vision at least once, but this is a movie where I don't remember how many people I told you, like, hey, how's Doctor Strange? Like, it's great. Have you watched WandaVision though? No? Then you cannot see Doctor Strange without, I mean, you can see it, but you're not going to understand Wanda's motivations. You're not going to understand why Wanda gives a shit about these kids or anything like that unless you've seen WandaVision. It's 9 episodes. They're a half hour long. Like, just power through, watch those, and you'll understand it. And I think watching WandaVision definitely ups the reasoning of Wanda's character in this film to the nth degree. I love the little surprise cameos that we did get. I love that they also didn't overstay their welcome. I remember being in the theater and I know Brian didn't really like his performance in the film, but when I saw John Krasinski pop up as fantastic, I was like,
yeah, the Illuminati was one of the things that kept me from liking this movie more, because it's like the idea of the Illuminati. I've known, I haven't read the comics, but I've heard the idea. I kind of like the concept of it, and of course they ruined, which would have been the biggest one I think for me would be to see Patrick Stewart as Charles Xavier. They ruined that in the trailers, of course. John,
but they didn't ruin playing the theme song when he
that was cool. The best part of the movie
was so great.
Animated theme song. But John Krasinski, obviously, we all said, "Oh, we'd love to see him as Reed Richards," and he shows up, and it's the most wooden, stiff, boring acting I've ever seen from him or from most people in this movie. And his character, and when he starts using his elasticity, it looks just as goofy as you'd expect it to, and it makes me not have hope for even an MCU version of Fantastic Four. I don't know if that character, that kind of thing, works. And then the other ones they chose to have in there, I was not impressed with any of their characters they had in this whole Illuminati thing. So it was things like that that's like, oh, this had such potential, but it's like,
Brian did like this movie, guys. It's in his ranking.
That's the reason. We think we're talking about most disappointing, and we're not. It's not even my top 5 disappointments of the year. I did like the movie. I'm just saying, because I expected this to be probably my top 1, 2, 3 movies, these are the things that knocked it down. But I mean, just being an MC movie and being Benedict Cumberbatch, Doctor Strange is awesome, and Wong and all these supporting characters, I really do enjoy the movie. So it just sounds like I'm bashing it though.
Like I said, I enjoyed the movie quite a bit. I loved Wanda's motivations in this film. I loved Benedict Cumberbatch's motivations in the film. Rachel McAdams, even though it looked like her mole grew 18 sizes in this film, I thought she was good in her performances. Brian is not a fan of this. I loved Sam Raimi's direction and how this felt like a horror film. There are moments when I was watching it going, holy crap, they are actually going to go this far in this movie because this is still MCU. Like, kids watch this. And there are moments where Wanda goes full on like Freddy Krueger in this movie that I was like, I didn't think they were going to do that. And I'm so fucking glad they did. I loved the Evil Deadness of it. There were so many times where I was like, this is just like Evil Dead. And I'm so for this. The Zombie Strange, I didn't think that was going to work, and it fucking worked great, and it looked great. I really had a lot of fun watching this. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I don't know if this one, it's right. It's at my number 3. Maybe it's because I'm still riding high of how much I enjoyed the aesthetics of it. It might be bottom top 10 by the time this movie or the year ends. But as of right now, Doctor Strange is one of my favorite movies of the year. I love almost every decision that they made in this film. And even with the Illuminati parts, the deaths in those, especially Black Bolt, oh my God, it's so freaking great. But that was my number 3, Brian's 5. My number 5 is a movie that was on Brian's most disappointed, and that is The Batman. Now, this was a movie that was ranked higher for me. It was actually my number 1 for a good while. Then it came out on HBO Max, and I rewatched it, and I started nodding off about halfway through, and I stopped it, and I still haven't gone back and rewatched it. I really enjoyed it. I think The Batman is a great film. It is really, really, really long, though. I think Pattinson does a great Batman, but he's not a great Bruce. Not yet, anyway. Not yet. They could come out with a sequel, and he is more Bruce, and it's great. His Bruce, I could not stand. He was this antsy, like, angry emo teen at like Alfred for 90% of the movie. It's like, dude, slap this fucking kid, Alfred. Like, he's being a little bitch for no reason. But his Batman, though, I really enjoy. I will say on rewatch, Paul Dano's Riddler is way worse. I was really into it. Now, if you told me that he was basically a copycat, or if he was playing Hush and he wasn't the actual Riddler, I'd be like, okay, cool, I'm fine with that. But knowing that he's the actual Riddler kind of drops it down a peg for me because I really don't like the performance of him overall. And I do like Paul Dano quite a bit. But when he gets to that whole, like, no!
It's cartoonishly bad.
What the hell are you doing? And then you added that addition of the 5-minute scene with Joker. And that's an actor that you and I both do not like. Now, that's not in the movie, so I'm not going to down it because of that. But it's so glad they pulled that shit out of the film. That 5-minute scene was not good. The actor who plays Joker, not good.
The look of Joker, not good. Nothing about that Joker is good.
Oh God, it's horrible. But what I did get in the movie, I actually did really like quite a bit. I love the aesthetic of how Gotham looked. I love the beginning of the film when Batman is this like feared person. When he comes out of the shadows, and every criminal sees the dark, and they're afraid he's gonna walk out. I love the aesthetic of that.
There were moments like that, yeah.
I think Catwoman in the film I thought was relatively solid. Colin Farrell Penguin, I thought he was great. I think he was great as the Penguin. I can't wait to see what they do because I know he's going to get his own show. I can't wait to see what Colin Farrell does with this. He embraced that role to the point where it didn't feel like it was Colin Farrell. So good on him. And I also loved, help me with the actor. I'm blanking on his name real quick because I'm not thinking. Gordon.
Jeffrey Wright?
Yes, thank you, Jeffrey Wright. He right now is is like one of my top favorites for supporting actor for Oscars. I loved every time he was on screen. I enjoyed the hell out of this movie. I loved his chemistry with Pattinson in the film as Gordon and Batman. To me, he was my favorite part of the film. It's just the movie is incredibly fucking long, and you watch it at home and you're distracted by cell phones and all this kind of stuff. It's very hard to get through that movie. In the theater, I had no problems with the movie in the theater. I really enjoyed it in the theater because I was just in the world of Gotham. But when you're watching it at home, it starts to weigh on you relatively quick. But it is my number 5. Will it be in my top 10 by year's end? Probably not. I would be surprised if Adam Project, Hustle, Chip and Dale leapfrog it by year's end because I can rewatch those right now. The Batman and be like, okay, let's watch Batman. But I really did like the film. It's just rewatchability, though, is not very high on that movie at all. But that is my number 5 film of the year.
It's my number 32 out of 49.
Clearly, we know Brian did not like the Batman. We knew this going in. Your You already did your 5. Your 4. See, now we're getting to the point where we've talked about a lot of these, so it's like, I don't remember where we're at.
Well, this will be a change. My number 4. Okay, peek behind the curtain. Due to work schedules and stuff, we have filmed this video in 2 parts. My number 4 wasn't on here a couple days ago. I just added it onto my list like yesterday. And this is an Indian film in Hindi language called RRR.
I have heard so many people talk about this damn movie, and I have not seen it, and now I kind of want to.
So there's some theaters near me because I'm about an hour and a half outside of Chicago, but there's some of the theaters in towards like the suburbs of Chicago. They play a regular schedule of there's one of those 24 screens, and they regularly have like 5 of them dedicated to Indian films. So there's all these Indian films come and go, and you see these things and you think nothing of them. But then theaters around me, like even in my town, have started playing like occasionally playing these Indian films. So this one came up, and I'm like, okay, I have no interest in watching some Indian film in Hindi language, and so I didn't go see it in the theater, even though I heard like, oh, this one's really good. Like, nah, I don't want to, especially because it's 3 hours and 7 minutes long. So I'm like, yeah, I don't need to see that. But then it came on Netflix. It's on Netflix right now. And I'm like, you know what? I keep hearing these rave reviews about this thing, about how it's so unique and it's got this crazy action to it. And it's just so much fun. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll check it out. Start to watch it. By a half hour in, I have already given up on this movie. I'm like, this is just too ridiculous. I mean, the action is like so cartoonish at times. The special effects, the CG is a little iffy at times. And it was like, this is just too weird. It's too ridiculous. So I decided not to watch it. But then a couple days later, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give it a chance because I keep hearing nothing but rave things about this. And I actually watched the whole thing. And I'll be damned if I didn't just enjoy the hell out of this ride. I think it's just that now when I go in the second time, knowing what to expect and knowing kind of the style of movie I was getting, it was a lot easier to kind of let yourself go, because this is a movie that it is completely ridiculous in a lot of really good ways and in a lot of not so good ways, because the action, this movie is super creative. The ambition of these people, the energy that they have towards this thing. There's even a couple random musical sequences thrown into the movie, and even the musical sequences are super impressive what they've done with this movie. And it's like I respect them for everything they put into this movie, and it's a ton of fun. Is it super weird? Absolutely, but the action, it's like no other action I've seen on screen before in several of the scenes. I would highly recommend it. My only drawbacks, I think, are it's got more use of slow-mo than even John Woo. That's saying a lot.
Does it have more slow-mo than Zack Snyder?
It just might. It probably at least rivals Zack Snyder into its use of slow-mo. So that, and like I said, the CGI at some points is really good. In a lot of points, you can tell, like especially like all the animals are all CG, and there's a lot of animals in this movie. But you're like, you just kind of overlook it and you just kind of go with it, and it's just a ton of fun. So I mean, I'm glad I gave it a second chance. This could end up in the lower end of my top 10 at the end of the year, but for now, it's like it was just so unique and so different and so fun that I'm glad I watched it.
And you said it is on Netflix?
It's on Netflix right now, yeah.
I might actually have to check this out, because I was like, none of my theaters around me are going to play this movie. And Dan Merle talked about this in his top 10 of the year. And I was like, okay, I got to figure out where this movie is. But now that I know it's on Netflix, I'll have to check it out. So because it just, like I said, we had to shoot this in 2 parts because Brian had to go to work. And so we're shooting this like, yes, we're wearing the same clothes because we wanted to take the illusion. We want to take the illusion that this was all shot in one time. It wasn't. But so what ended up, what got knocked off your list because you added this?
Originally I put instead of Uncharted was on my top 10, and that got bumped to honorable mention. Originally my honorable mention was going to be a cheat. I was going to combo Jackass Forever and Jackass 4.5. It was going to be an honorable mention for me.
I mean, because you didn't even say anything about Jackass when I talked about it.
You kind of skipped over me, so I was like,
okay. Yeah. So Jackass gets honorable mentions all around.
Yes.
Which Brian loved Jackass.
I do. But like you, it's like when I make my top 10 movies of the year, things like that, or if there's like a concert movie, or if there's even documentaries for me, I kind of have their own kind of world,
Exactly. I've only got 2 movies left. How many do you have left? Based off of
I have 2. I already talked my number 3 is Adam Project. So.
Okay, so your 1 and 2 are still there.
Yes.
I think our 1 and 2 might actually be the same one too.
Oh, absolutely not.
No?
I don't think so.
All right. Go ahead with your number 2 then.
My number 2 is on your biggest disappointments list. It's Jurassic World Dominion.
Shut the fuck up.
So,
Seriously?
So clearly that's not in your top 2.
Are you fucking with me right now?
No, I'm not.
Oh my god. Okay, I'll just be quiet.
We've already had this discussion. I enjoy Jurassic World Dominion. It has its issues here and there, but honestly, for the most part, I thought it was great. I think there are things places I wish that we had gone that it didn't. It kind of went different direction than I would have preferred it to. There's things they spent a lot of time on, like the Locusts, which obviously we didn't want to see any of that. We didn't care about that storyline. But I mean, it's a Jurassic World movie. You get to see plenty of dinosaur action. You get to see the old cast and the new cast back together again. So I mean, I just had a ton of fun, and I don't really care what anybody thinks. That's all I'll say about that. We did a whole. I'm not going to re-review the movie. We have a whole review. Go watch that.
Exactly. You dogged that movie so hardcore in the spoiler. I didn't think it'd be anywhere really close to your number 2 movie of the year. Well, our number 1's going to be the same then. Our number 1's going to be the same.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and go with my number 2 because somehow it did not crack your top 10, which is weird. Yeah. It's weird because you're describing RRR and you're literally describing pretty much the same fucking movie that my number 2 is, which is also my number 1 most surprising film of the year, and that is Everything Everywhere All at Once. This movie, I remember you were excited for this film, and I saw the trailer for it. I was like, nah. I was like, it looks like it's like too like just all over the place, much like oh god, what's the director who did like being John Malkovich, and I'm thinking of ending things. Huh?
Spike Jonze or Charlie Kaufman?
Charlie Kaufman. I was like, it's like, oh no, it looks like it's up its own ass. Like, this doesn't look good at all. But then I kept hearing everyone go, oh my God, this movie's great. This is fantastic. Da, 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 da. So I finally watched it. And yes, this movie, much like RRR is for Brian, this movie is insane. It's crazy. It's got weird things in there that don't necessarily always work. But, and I said this in my review, the best way to describe what Everything Everywhere All at Once is you open a box and it's a jumbled, knotted up mess of Christmas lights. It's just batshit craziness of knots, but you got to work your way through the knots to get what you want, which are the Christmas lights. Once you work your way through all those knots, you get something so simple, which is a story about family. And through that, you have unwoven all these knots to get to the Christmas lights. You're getting the story about the multiverses. You're getting great action. You're getting some great comedy. You're getting some things that you did not expect to see, like some weird hot dog finger crap and some weird Pixar spinoff things that was funny, but they kind of overused. You get this weird segment with talking rocks, which for some reason hit way harder than it had any fucking right to be. You got Jamie Lee Curtis in probably the worst outfit I've ever seen, but her character actually is fantastic in the film. Michelle Yeoh puts on an Oscar-worthy performance in this film. Help me with his name because I'm going to say it wrong. Short Round.
Ke Huy Quan.
Ke Huy Quan, phenomenal in this movie. The daughter, who I'm blanking on her name, but she was in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. She's fantastic in this film. I love the cast. I love the story. Yes, there are some weird elements that don't quite work for me, but the action in this movie is great. I've never seen a scene, spoiler alert, where a dude literally is getting his ass kicked by Michelle Yeoh, and the only way to fight her and battle it is to put a fucking dildo up his ass to power boost himself and then have him fight with this thing sticking out of, or it's a butt plug sticking out of his butt. It's so insanely weird, but I loved it. I love this movie so damn much, and it hits you on the heartstrings in all the right moments. I know it didn't with Brian because it didn't even crack his top 10. But this movie is fucking amazing. I love this movie so damn much, and if it wasn't for how awesome number 1 is, this would easily be my number 1. And this was at one point I think my number 4, but I actually went back and rewatched it, and it jumped over Northman and Doctor Strange for me. This is a movie that I would definitely go back and rewatch many, many times. Brian, not apparently not.
Well, it's just a movie. It's in my top 15, and I think at times it's been all the way up to number 5 or 6 or things like that. And this is a movie that when the trailers come out, I was very intrigued because it looked like kind of indie movie version of like, because obviously we've seen all the trailers for Multiverse of Madness coming out. I'm like, this is like the indie version of the multiverse. I'm like, this could be something that's a different take on the same kind of concept. We're going to see it. I like the cast, of course. I'm glad to see Ke Huy Quan back in acting again. So I had very, very high hopes for this movie, and I went and saw it, and I thought it was a lot of fun. It was a little bit of a disappointment just because I think that there are times they went too far into the goofiness with the Ratatouille moment, with the hot dog fingers, with the things like this got too much. They started beating me over the head with the whole family message thing towards the end. You're just like, oh my God, I'm just rolling my eyes through. And also the movie is a good 30 minutes too long. The ending alone stretches out like 10 minutes longer than it needs to be. It just like keeps going and going and going. You're like, okay, can we just wrap this up already? So I mean, there were little things about it bother me. For the most part, I love the concept of it. I like the acting performances of it. I just think it was a little messier than I hoped it would be. But it still probably would have been in my top 10. But it's one of those movies where as much as I try to block it out, just hearing people just praise it and praise it and praise it as best film of the year, I'm just like, oh, it's not that good. And it almost makes me dislike it a little more. So it's like, and what I want to do, and I will do before the end of the year, is I want to go back and rewatch it after the hype has died down. And so I can just like watch it fresh again without thinking of everybody just loving on this movie and just, form a new opinion on it.
I will say this. You are out of your mind at year's end if you think Uncharted is a better movie than this.
I enjoyed Uncharted more than I enjoyed this one because Uncharted didn't bore me for a half hour at a time, and there weren't scenes with hot dog fingers,
and
Ratatouille hair.
Both of those things equal up to about 2 minutes of actual.
Yeah, and they're enough to make me to hurt my feelings of the overall movie.
Hurt my feelings. Anyway, our number one is a consensus number one.
Number one surprise of the year.
What's that? See, I didn't put it as my surprise because I was like, I was excited for it because of the cast, so I knew that like I wasn't gonna be surprised. Plus, the word of mouth was so like through the roof, which I'm surprised that you're hating on how everyone's hating on everything everywhere all at once, but you're not hating on this one that's because you actually like this movie.
I at this point, like I was telling you the other day, I'm kind of ready for this to stop making money and stop being like, it's the box office success of the year. Because I'm like, okay, let's just back off.
In case you guys haven't figured it out yet, it's Top Gun Maverick. I remember us talking about this movie during Most Anticipated. It's like, oh my God, is this movie ever actually going to come out? I feel like we've seen the trailer for it for so long. We bashed the casting choice of Glenn Powell not being actually Goose's son instead of Miles Teller. I think the movie did a pretty damn good job of making us feel wrong about that, because I think Miles Teller was actually really, really good as Rooster, and I think Glenn Powell was really good as
I think it was just a smart move because my understanding of the situation is basically they wrote the part of Hangman for Glenn Powell because they're like, well, you didn't get this part, but we'd like to make a part for you, and they wrote this part for him. And whether or not the part existed, or maybe they just changed the part, I don't know the details behind it, but it fits him perfectly. I'm glad he was in that role instead of. Would I have seen more of him in the movie? Yes, but I'm glad he was not Rooster. I'm glad he got the role he got.
I mean, he did get his hero moment at the end of the movie, so it's like he gets to say, yeah. But Top Gun Maverick, this is a movie that, and I hate the people that are going like, I don't understand why people like this movie. This movie's so basic, and it's just the plot is stupid and the character development is stupid. It's like you actively went into this movie to try to hate this film. This movie does a great job of doing character development on these characters that, frankly, Top Gun, it's an average film. It's overrated as fuck. But Top Gun Maverick builds on those characters and what they went through in the first film. Tom Cruise is murdering this performance in this film. He is going out there making sure that you feel everything Maverick feels in this film, and how he still isn't over the death of Goose from the first film. I actually liked the Val Kilmer cameo. Brian did not. He thought it was a little over, not over the top, but he thought it wasn't needed, kind of thing. But I
thought it was a pity cameo, and
you thought it was a pity cameo, and I thought it was a nice, like, hey, we might not see Val Kilmer much anymore, so let's
pity.
Yeah. I don't think it's pity. I think he did what he did in the movie. He was good in it. In the one scene, I thought he did a great job in the mode that he was in. It did enough.
You said that it was because we might not see him again, so that's the definition.
That's not a pity. A pity thing is to throw him in there just to say, there's Val Kilmer. But no, he had a scene. He had a legitimate scene that made sense and that worked with the film. But to me, honestly, the one thing that makes this movie to me work is the aerial dogfighting, the way they shot this film, the way they did the camera work inside the pilots, the way it felt like, to me, the most Star Wars dogfight Rogue Squadron kind of thing I've ever seen. And if they ever do actually make Rogue Squadron, because now we don't know if it's going to get made, if they don't get the people that shot Top Gun Maverick to shoot Rogue Squadron, you have failed that film before it's even started. Because there's that one moment right before they do the actual mission where they're going around the mountain and they got their exhaust going off and they're fighting in unison. I was like, that is a beautiful, breathtaking scene, and it made me think of Star Wars. And I loved everything about this. I thought, like I said, Miles Teller was great as Rooster. Jennifer Connelly, gorgeous in this fucking film. I loved her character in this film. Every character, I think, fit the role that they were supposed to be. Could they have gotten a little more time on certain characters to add a little more to them? Sure. But they all played the roles that they were supposed to play in this film. And I enjoyed the hell out of this movie. Was not expecting to love it as much as I did. I think you and I both went in with even lower expectations because everyone was talking this thing up to the moon. You and I were actually like almost like pre-gaming, like talking ourselves into not getting super excited for this because like people are talking this thing up way too much that it is not going to hit the expectations that we're expecting. And we went in with very low to try to not be overly disappointed. And it hit. It hit for us. It hit for me, definitely. And obviously for you, because it was your number one movie of the year. Yeah,
what's weird for me is that going into this, like for the last 17 years or whatever they've been saying this movie's coming out, it's been one that I've kind of been looking forward to, but kind of not all that excited about because, I mean, you're like, where are they going to go with the story? You know, obviously Val Kilmer can't be part of it. And so you start, excuse me, and you think of all these other like legacy sequels, you know, that have come out that have not quite been everything you hope they'd be, you know, but so it's like it could have very easily just been one of those that just kind of feels like a little bit of a cash in, a little bit of a nostalgia factor is all there is to it. So I mean, this one I think even on my most anticipated for this year, I want to say it was 17 out of, you know, top 20 or something like that. Mm-hmm. It was not one of my more highly anticipated movies of the year. Even right after I saw the trailers, I'm like, it looks fine. I think I'll enjoy the movie. Unlike Sean, I love the original Top Gun. I don't think it's.
I didn't say you didn't like it.
I don't think it's. I know, but you say it's overrated as fuck.
I do think it's overrated.
I don't agree. I think it is an 80s classic. It is a ton of fun. I mean, it's not trying to be, you know, deep, you know, Oscar-winning drama. It's supposed to be just an action epic.
I say it's overrated as fuck. I still like the movie. I just don't think it's because I watched it for the first time this year. So when you're having 30 plus years of people talking this fucking movie up, and then you finally watch, you're like, it was good. It wasn't like, oh my God.
I've definitely had movies like that where people have talked them up forever, and then when I finally see it, I'm like, yeah.
That's what I'm talking about when I say overrated as fuck. I still like Top Gun, guys. Don't hate me on that.
But so that's why I love Top Gun. But I had, you know, reasonable expectations for it. Even after I saw the trailers, like I said, I was like, okay, you know, it's gonna be what it is. And then I don't know what it was. I want to say like a month before it came out, started hearing all these people just praising, like, "Oh my gosh, this is the best movie of the year, and this could actually be nominated for Oscars," things like that. Which I still think that's a little.
Yeah, it was basically right after we shot our summer movie preview where we ranked.
Yeah, it was literally like the next day.
Yeah,
they listened to whatever review embargo, and people were praising. Like, well, I would have upped my.
I think we both had it at 7. For the box office, like, it's gonna finish around 7. I was like, "Crap, we were so wrong."
No, I still probably would not have said number 1, but I probably would have put this at 3 or 4 had I heard.
Yeah, it would definitely would have been top 5
beforehand. So I mean, so I went in. So at that point, my expectations, I raised them a little bit, but I wasn't ready to start overpraising it like some people were. And you know, I saw the movie, and like Sean said, I mean, I kind of blown away by it. I still don't think it's like the perfect movie that a lot of people do. I have a few minor issues with it, but they're mostly nitpicks. You know, some things, the way the third act goes is a little weird for me, things like that. I do agree that there should have been some more character moments, whether it be between Rooster and Maverick, whether it be just giving Glenn Powell more screen time. I'd love to see Lewis Pullman get some more screen time. That guy, I like him.
Lewis Pullman was a character that I was like, oh God, this character just, and I was like, then I was like,
yeah,
he's actually a really good character. Him and I'm blanking on the girl's name. we
Phoenix
still,
on it.
still don't know what the fuck her and Rooster's relationship is in this
Yeah.
movie.
So I would have liked to see some more scenes of those, yes. But I have nitpicks. But for the most part, like you said, it's a ton of fun. And what really makes it is those aerial dogfight scenes and things, and knowing that they made sure the public knew, shoved it down our throats. Everything here was shot real. This is the way they actually flew these planes and filmed them like this, which I guess makes it hard for these same people to film Rogue Squadron. But they can't really fly in outer space like that. But
No, but you can shoot it like this, and then you can green screen it to the point where it looks like an X-wing, and you can make it work. Let's just say that you can make it work.
You can't do the same shooting style, but you can do the same the same look to it, same cinematography to it.
You can make it work.
But I mean, those scenes are what makes the movie, and it makes it a ton of fun. So I mean, this is a movie. Could it be number one at the end of the year? It's possible. I mean, we don't know what the whole second half of the year holds, but it'll definitely be top 5.
Oh yeah, it will definitely be in the top 5. I don't like, unless something. I mean, we're not going to have something like In the Heights or something like that come out this year, because it's not. But there could be some movies that just shock the shit out of me and Brian, and we creep it over on Top Gun, or Top Gun could easily still be in the top 3 to number 1 at the end of the year, which I hope not, because then that means that the rest of this year is really gonna be disappointing. but yeah, Top Gun easily is gonna be in the top 5. There's no, I will be shocked if top 5, if it's not top 5 at the end of the year for us, because that means that there's at least 6 other movies.
I was gonna say that means that we had a great second half of the year.
Yeah, that means that I'm gonna be ecstatic for the next 6 months that that's the case. Like, holy crap, people! But because if Top Gun's not in the top 5, then we had a great rest of 2022. Sadly, we're realists, and we're like, no, Top Gun's probably gonna still be in the top 3, definitely top 5, because we just know how movies go. But and as I'm talking, I'm gonna put up what our final rankings were for our most disappointed, our worst films of the year, surprising, and our bests of the top 10 stuff, because we're doing our normal end of show stuff, so I'm gonna put all those up right now so you guys can see, because we were all over the place on our stuff, so this more defined where we finished for our top 5 disappointing, surprising, worst, and best. Now at the end of the year, we'll do it how we did it last year, where we'll have our disappointing and worst on one video and our surprising and best on another video, because we'll have more time to talk about them. We'll be more fleshed out. I mean, we talked about them at good length on this video as well, but it'll be more separated up for that. But for the half year, we're just doing it all in one take kind of thing. Well, not necessarily one take, because we're doing this on 2 separate days. But we hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Movie Crusaders. If you guys did, hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, you can follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, I know Rise of Gru came out. I had no fucking intentions of seeing the Minions movie. I will not see that fucking film. Brian will see it at some point. And I swear to God, Brian, if that movie ends up in your fucking top 10.
I feel safe in saying it will likely not make my top 10. I will go see it because my son really wants to see it. So
you have kids, that makes sense. Yeah. But I swear to God, that movie ends up in your top 10 of your 10. We are no longer going to be doing a show together. But I'm not going to be doing a review for that. So our next episode is probably going to be the Thor Love and Thunder non-spoiler and potentially spoiler review if Brian so sees fit to want to do one with me. We have not finalized our July shows yet. I think there's one show we still need to kind of figure out what we're going to do. But as soon as we do, I will post that on the Facebook page and everywhere, so you guys know exactly what shows we're shooting for the month of July. But that is kind of the next thing we got coming up, is the Thor non-spoiler and potential spoiler review. Anything else you'd like to add before we go?
No, just that this year is, although we had disappointments, things like that, we've had a pretty strong first half of the year, especially considering the last 2 years of films, of what there was of it. So I feel like,
whereas I think last year it was more like straight to video, like indie films, like Guns Akimbo. Well, that was 2020, but like Boss Level and stuff like that.
And I still have half of my most anticipated list has yet to come out this year, so I'm looking forward to the rest of the year.
Yeah, so it's very exciting second half that we have hopefully very, very flourished and good 2022 the rest of the way. And we hope you guys enjoy the movies that are coming out here in the next 2020. Let us know what your top 10 was, what you like, dislike about our lists. You can say, our lists suck and that all those movies are horrible, which I think we did a relatively good job with our top 10 list. But if you were mad at our worst, tell us if those movies were good or not, because I'm sorry, those movies were not good. But nonetheless, we are the Movie Crusaders. My name is Sean Wasserkrug. That is Brian Michaels. Until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.